And the numbers are rising. So welcome everybody. Happy International Tourist Guide Day. My name is Emma Guest-Consales. I'm the president of the Guides Association of New York City, also known as GANYC. And I'm here with a wonderful international panel from around the world, from around the United States. My co-host for the evening is Michael Dillinger, vice president of the National Federation of Tourist Guides Association, also known as NFTGA. So as people are coming in, I'll repeat this a couple times. You all the attendees are not visible. You're just going to have your names listed, but you're welcome to put any questions just for greetings really in the chat, but actual questions for our panelists will go into the Q&A once we get going. So in a couple more minutes, we'll go through a little technical housekeeping and then we'll get started. So as you come in, if you want to put in the chat where you're listening from and where you are, if you're a tour guide, if you're a tour director, if you're a tour operator, we'd love to hear from you. And it's nice to see panels from all around the world. We have 240 people registered, so I'm just watching the numbers go up. So yeah, so welcome everybody. Again, my name is Emma, and I'm president of the Guides Association of New York City, and we're here to celebrate International Tourist Guide Day. So please add where you're from into the chat, and we'll have a look. We'll be able to see where people are tuning in. Okay, and I see we already have one question. Yeah, hey, Hermit, this is great to see you. So yeah, so we'll add questions into the Q&A for our panelists once we get started with our conversation. So happy International Tourist Guide Day. Yep, numbers keep going up, so this is great. Michael, would you like to say anything?
Oh, well, good afternoon from New York City. And yes, happy International Tourist Guide Day. And I love that we're doing this. And I will tell you that one of the things that I love about this is that I have learned more from my colleagues than from anybody else ever, from any class I've ever taken. And what really changed the game for me was I was a little over 5 years into being a full-time tour guide here in New York City. I went to my first World Federation of Tour Guides Associations conference, and it opened my eyes and changed my entire perspective on my work as a guide and where guides fit in our industry. And it was absolutely amazing. But the most amazing part of it was the connections I made with colleagues from all over the world, and the experience, the shared experience. And when we got to talk about how we do our jobs, the things I've learned, the tips I've learned, it's absolutely invaluable. And I'm so excited that we get to do this today and share this, because there was no international conference for us this year. And so that guides from all over the world can kind of hear this conversation that we're going to have today. I'm very, very excited and thrilled that we got to do this, and thank NFTGA, National Federation of Tour Guides Association, for allowing us to present this for International Tourist Guide Day.
So thank you, Michael. And so everybody, also, as you put your comments and your greetings in the chat, please don't forget to direct them to all panelists and attendees to make sure that everybody sees your comment. If you just want to tell the panelists something, or just want to tell us something one-on-one, you can change that. But please put all panelists and attendees to make sure everyone who's watching can also see where you're from, okay? And the chat will be open the entire time. Michael or I will be monitoring it. And as we are watching, as you're watching the discussion, if you go to view in the upper corner, please make sure you have selected gallery view, and then you'll be able to see everybody. If you have speaker view, right now you'll just see me. But if you have gallery view, you'll be able to see everybody, and that just makes it a little more interactive and a little more fun. So welcome again, everybody. We're just going to wait one more minute, literally one more minute, and then we'll get started. So again, my name is Emma Guest-Consales. I'm the president of the Guides Association of New York City, and I've been working on this panel discussion roundtable with Michael Dillinger, vice president of the National Federation of Tourist Guides Association, and we're really happy to have everyone here to celebrate International Tourist Guide Day. So I see lots of GANYC guides. I see some from DC. I see some Costa Rican guides from California, everybody from all over. So this is really, really great. So I think the numbers have sort of slowed down a bit. We are recording this, so if you have to step out, you will be able to watch this again. It will be posted to the GANYC YouTube page. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to hand over the introductions to Ellen Malaski, who is president of the National Federation of Tourist Guides Associations, which is actually sponsoring this panel, and she's come to us from Washington, D.C. So Ellen, go for it.
Hi, well, hello everybody. Greetings on behalf of the board of NFTGA, and good day to everybody. It's so good that everybody could get together. Yes, I'm Ellen Malaski. I'm the president of NFTGA, and I'm a long-serving member of the Guild of Professional Tour Guides of Washington, D.C. A little bit about International Tourist Guide Day. It was established at the WFTGA, and that's the World Federation of Tourist Guide Associations conference in 1989. And it was to be celebrated each year on February 21st. Now, I always wondered why the February 21st. Well, that was the day that WFTGA was founded. So that's their birthday. In 1990, the first time it was celebrated, only 15 countries belonged. Now over 70 countries participate in some way in National Tourist Guide Day, International Tourist Guide Day. In 1990, in the US, we had a number of individual associations, but there was no, well, NFTGA was just getting started. So there was no national NFTGA association or a celebration. It's not to say that the US hasn't always celebrated International Tourist Guide Day in some way or the other in the past. Through the years, a number of the associations have done a number of free things in their town. They've done free tours and free celebrations. The problem was for many of us, especially in the East, it's in the winter. And a number of our free tours, just there weren't people to come out for our free tours. I mean, today in Washington, I think it's going to get into the mid 30s, but it's not exactly a day you want to go on a tour. So a lot of people, they sort of, we never had, you know, we would do some things, but not others. But then a number of associations would have other ways. They'd do things for their membership. You'll see tomorrow night, GANYC's going to have their awards ceremony that they do with celebrating tour guides and tourism. In DC a couple of years ago, we had all of the people who had been at the Tbilisi conference present what they had learned, and then we toasted International Tourist Guide Day that way and our fellow guides. But this is the first time, so this is the first time that NFTGA's had a national celebration. And using that old phrase, we're making a lemon of COVID and turning it into the lemonade of having guides across the country and across the world, Zooming together in our own homes. We're only able to accomplish this because of the wonderful work of Emma and Michael have done to set this all up. And I know it's going to be a wonderful celebration and of both international tourism and of the International Tourist Guide. And I've always wanted to say this. So on with the show.
Wow.
Great. Thank you so much, Ellen. That's really kind of you. And thank you for a lovely introduction. And yes, we're all, you know, taking advantage of the circumstances and the situation we're in now, thanks to the COVID pandemic. And so it's great to see everybody. I have to say, for me too, it's been really eye-opening and it's been wonderful to be able to be in touch with guides from all around the world. Some of the panelists I've just met thanks to this panel. Some people I've just met very recently, others I've known for years. So this is really a great time to get together and to see each other. And so with that, I'm going to hand over the reins to Michael Dillinger. And Michael Dillinger, as I said, Vice President of NFTGA, the National Federation of Tourist Guides Associations, a longtime New York City tourist guide, and a man with whom I've worked for many, many, many years. We had our first adventure with WFTGA together in Prague a long time ago, and we've served together on the GANYC board for a very long time as well. So Michael, why don't you take it away with our international panelists? I will pin the panelists who will be speaking right now, and let's get started. So go ahead, Michael.
Great. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody, from New York City anyway, or good evening or good morning, depending on what time zone you're in right now. We're thrilled to have you with us today to celebrate International Tourist Guide Day. This is a very exciting event for me. As I said earlier in remarks, I've learned more from my fellow colleagues than I've learned from any class I've ever taken. And it's the discussions that we have about how we do our jobs that really pay off the most. And so I'm excited to moderate this panel, this first panel. And these are guides from around the world. And we have 4 countries represented here today. We have Italy, Stefania from Italy.
Hi.
We have Mark from the UK. We have Barış from Turkey, and we have Lucy from Costa Rica. So now if each of you would just introduce yourselves briefly to our audience and let them know who you are, how long you've been guiding, and something about the type of tours you do. Keep it brief if you can. Who wants to go first? Otherwise, I'll pick. Okay.
You pick, Michael.
Okay. So Stefania, why don't you start us off?
Okay. So, dear friends and dear colleagues, I'm very happy to be with you and to share my experience with all of you in the strange world where we're all in now. I mean, I feel also blessed. I've been a guide for over 20 years, and I'm very proud of my job as a tourist guide. I work prominently in Venice, and in its surrounding area, in the Venetian Lagoon. I work basically in my own language, particularly in the last year. I could work basically in Italian, but I'm very fond of Russian culture. So Russian and English are my other languages, and I work with small groups, with student groups sometimes, families, and art lovers, food lovers. So I try to specialize my tours and to let them be also enjoyable and entertaining. And so I love being a guide.
Great. How about you, Mark?
Hello, everybody, or talking to many Americans, yeehaw, how, buenos dias, howdy, whatever you recognize. It's good evening for me here in London. I am based in the United Kingdom. It's my 11th year working as a tourist guide. Maybe I will work this year as a tourist guide. It's my 3rd career after graduating with a bachelor's honours from the University of Oxford in modern languages and modern history. I've been a guide in the London region, as I say, for 11 years, and I got an additional qualification. That's the blue badge that I'm wearing here. And I got a green badge for the City of London, the business district at the heart of London, a couple of years later as well. My clients are mostly upper end North American visitors, small groups, families, but also a fair volume of educational tours, students on study abroad programs and that kind of thing, as well as visitors from all around the world, India and other parts of Europe. English language is what I guide in. My tours are mostly half day with the client or a whole day. Very rarely it's more than 1 day. I know some of you work as tour managers, tour directors. Here that's generally a very different profession route. I've been 6 years on the board of the British Guild of Tourist Guides and 2 of those years as chair, and I was inducted as a Life Fellow earlier this year of the Guild. I've also written a book, a quiz book about London, and I'm an active member at the moment of our coronavirus task force, which is a cross-organizational group that is steering and leading the response to the current pandemic, and which is something we may want to come back to talk about later on. My background's in business development and marketing communication, so I also bring that to the guiding world. And I'm just very passionate about celebrating Britain and about hating free tours.
Oh, well.
All right. Okay, Lucy.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Lucia Sanchez, or I go by Lucy. I'm from Costa Rica, from a small city called Alajuela, San Ramon, the city. I've been a certified tour guide for 20 years. I'm a polyglot, and I'm the owner, president, or I have the honor of being the president of the Costa Rican Tour Guides Association, ACOGITUR. We receive so many tourists, mainly from North America and some Europeans. I work as a tour guide and also as a tour leader for many groups. My basic is for sport groups the college and universities from North America, United States, and Canada. As well, I led some groups from Italy and from Portugal and Brazil, as those are my languages. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm so happy to be part of this. Such a small country like ours, be surrounded so many that we can get so many experience. So thank you very much for the invitation, and I hope we all learn together today.
Great, thank you. And finally, Barış.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Emma. Also, I want to greet Alan Malaski that we met 2 years ago. As you point out at the beginning of your speech, I had many beautiful friends in Tbilisi, and then on, I didn't want to miss the contact together. So thanks to you, thanks to our president, we are together here. I'm from Istanbul. Based in Turkey, based in Istanbul. I'm a little bit excited. You know, I can keep talking for hours and hours, but here is a little bit, you know, difficult. We have a Turkish phrase, tereciye tere satmak. It's like that, but I will explain later. So I guide in mainly Turkish. I started in Turkish language, then I add English, then Greek. I work in Turkey, inbound and also outbound. 59 countries been to so far. With Turkish people going out abroad and bringing foreigners into Turkey. Mostly I work in English language. We have great variety tours, daily tours, half day, almost none. We don't have a half day tour here. I would like to have. Sometimes we have 3 or 4 nights tours around Mediterranean basin. Up to 11 days, we may have tours here. Groups might be up to 35 people. So our job is very difficult here. We have to know too many things. I don't want to get into detail now. I'll keep the panelists talking, then I'll come on.
Great. Okay, thank you. Well, now, as you know, we talk very often in this industry about guides being the ambassadors, the cultural ambassadors for their city, their country, to the world. So I'm curious to know what that actually means to you individually. What is the most important aspect of that in your view? So Stefania, why don't you start us on that?
I think you really, you are touching a very important point, because the role Venice would like to have in the future, and possibly the role Venice always had, was the one of being a cultural capital. And we would like to be a permanent European capital of culture. So not only to be a mass tourism heading, you know, place, but to be really a special place in the heart of everybody. And so I feel this like one of my missions, actually, because when I had to see, especially with mass tourism, let's say with over tourism we had before this pandemic, I met many people with a special stereotype coming to my city, and most of them were, you know, looking, okay, San Marco Square, okay. And then what else do you have here to see? What else? What? So, I mean, you feel like, you know, it's a bit embarrassing because there's so much to see. And I would like Venice to be a slow tourism also attraction, in order to discover it and in order to make yourself confident with it without thinking only, you know, okay, I want to get lost, but I don't want to get lost. I mean, people have this kind of fear. I want them really to discover, and there's a lot to discover in the region. So I feel all guides are really ready to be able to let people feel. And also another stereotype is when you feel like you are an ambassador, and the local population can be very embarrassing to tourists. I was reading a comment a friend of mine was making today. We thought everything is going to change with this pandemic, and the people will effectively be respectful to tourism. You can, in the past years, you can never imagine they were coercing us while we were working. So this could be very embarrassing, because actually many people now who travel can understand perfectly, Italian, especially rude, taboo words. So can you imagine what could happen in these situations? It can be really embarrassing. And so this is in contrast with the idea of being an ambassador, being polite, but then again, you feel sometimes you can reach your point and you can have really people who stick to you and want to drink from you whatever you are telling, and especially they want tips to eat well, not to be, to go to the touristy mass restaurants, drink well and feel themselves like at home. And that's very important. So the message is you don't want them to eat at the pasta to go. So you're trying, instead they want to save money. So you want to be loyal, you want to be like a friend, you want to be friendly, but not too much. So that's also a kind of, you go from culture, you switch, you have a large array of possibilities with different people. And our difficult is really understanding what you have in front of you in the quickest possible way. And also you have to be attentive not to offend this person maybe. So you have to be tactless. Sometimes situations can happen.
So Stefania, you brought up a really good point, and I think it's one that for all of the panel is that, so what do you do as an ambassador when you're with visitors and the locals are like, visitor, go home, we hate you, or they start cursing you out. So anybody want to chime in on that particular aspect?
Believe me, they do.
They do. They can get very nervous.
How do you
try to say, I want to defend my visitors. I want to stand out for them, and I want them to feel like at home. So I don't want rude people to offend them first. And on the other hand, if something happens and possibly one of my guests would be offensive to one of the locals, I will try to, to stay quiet, first of all, because this is very difficult for me. Sometimes I can be a typical Italian waving and you have street theater going on. I mean, that's Italy, and in Venice, this can be in every single minute of your day. But I don't wanna coerce, but sometimes I had to be very, very rude myself with the local part in order to defend my guest, because it's too much.
Anybody else want to comment on that particular aspect of giving a tour?
I think Lucy was ready to comment.
Lucy, oh yes, Lucy's got her hand up. I'm sorry. Hi, Lucy. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Hello. Oh, well, in this topic, it's interesting. When we are an ambassador, or as we are an ambassadors, and the question is like, how do you deal with locals thinking about the visitors that come here? Well, so many people will say like, well, it's nice. They will bring, and help the economy of the country. They will invest in here from the small places to the big chain of hotels. But you also are ambassador for the locals. So you have to be a balance in between both of them. And you will have to find, and you must find the very positive thing from what the visitors can give to the local and what the locals can get from the visitors and provide to them as an experience and traditions and culture. So I think that as an ambassadors, most ideal is that we have to be ambassador, not just for the visitors, but also to the locals and for the locals, to show everything in one same, mass, put it that way.
Right. Excellent. Yes, Mark.
Well, in London, we are the major gateway into tourism in the United Kingdom, but fortunately, I can think of very few situations where over-tourism is an issue. There is one particular tour in the East End of London, the Whitechapel area, where celebration of a certain notorious murderer from the 19th century can cause some very difficult flashpoints with locals who quite reasonably get fed up of hearing bullshit spoken under their windows throughout the day, gory bullshit sometimes as well. So otherwise, you know, there are islands off the coast of Scotland where cruise ships arriving can cause big problems, I think, like in Venice. But generally speaking, you know, there's a tolerance of tourism here and a welcome for it. And we're fortunate not to have that friction, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a massive duty to the long term and the future of our colleagues not yet born, not to screw it up for them by taking advantage today. We need to create a sustainable industry that continues to benefit from the permission of the wider community to operate. Mm. There are some situations in the Cotswolds, a very picturesque part of the country, where a very pretty village called Arlington, there were situations where Japanese and Korean visitors, I'm sorry to single them out, were literally walking up the pretty garden paths and staring through the windows into these picturesque houses. People live there, folks. They've had to put up signs at the gates to basically say that way, you know. But generally, we're lucky. It's an accepted thing and welcomed.
Yep. Okay, Barış, you have anything to add on this topic?
Yeah, we have a very big issue with camels. Everybody thinks that we are living on the camels. The second issue is the religion. Most of the time, if you know, Turkey is not like Arabic country Islam, but we have localized Islam understanding. It takes time for them to understand, to figure out what sort of country we are. But thanks to God, I have very good assistants. Turkish cuisine consists of Armenian cuisine, Greek cuisine, even Russian bread, Arabic sweet. It's beautiful combination. It helps me a lot here.
Well, Barış, you bring up an excellent point as well, and it was on my list as well, which is so people come to your country from other areas and they have this much knowledge of your culture.
Especially Americans, you know.
They have this much knowledge.
And they have to start the Romans from 200 BC, you know.
And everything they know, they've gotten from the media, and they know this much. And so they come and they expect you to be,
and that much is not correct.
So how do you, as ambassadors now and as guides, how do you deal with their preconceptions? How do you address them? And how do you educate them and take them from the little they know and show them a wider perspective and give them an authentic, a real experience, not the thing they saw in the movie, but something that's real and speaks to the heart of your culture? How
too many questions you ask now. How I'm gonna remember? I'm already excited. You know, I missed to explain who I am.
Take part of it. Just take part of it. I'm just interested in some of that perspective that you have. So
it's very difficult to change the ideas of people, you know. But if they are positive, if they have a good intention to understand you, if you are sincere, if you don't make benefit out of the subject, the topic, they understand you. But doesn't mean that always they change. Some very bad experiences may change completely their ideas, or good experiences. For example, today we were speaking about OAT. I was guide for OAT for a while. They have 2 days accommodation, 2 nights accommodation in a village house. That was the perfect way to localize the tourists, for example. The first comes to my mind.
Okay. So anybody else? Lucy, you have your hand up again. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I think that, and sometimes it's hard. So many people will come, and even if they study from a book guide, from national history or wherever, they come with a different idea. We have a Caribbean coast in Costa Rica. And when they come to our Caribbean, they expect the white sands. And we have black sand because we're volcanic product, okay? That's one thing. So imagine how hard it can be that in just few hours, people from a cruise ship comes down and, explore the country. And as a guide, we have to try to give them all the information that we have to make sure by the end of the day, they go back and they say, well, I was in Costa Rica, the country. They don't were in the island of Costa Rica, and we were not San Juan, Puerto Rico, for example. So those are very common mistakes they made. But when we decided, and I think that when more than this a decision, it was more like a passion growth and born in a guide. We decided, or we started to say that if we can change one people's mind, and if we can transmit, or we can share some of our knowledge, and it will stick, just a few little things, it's really nice. I had an experience that I just share, all the time. I was a tour guide from cruise ships, and I was just using, learning. So who wants to learn Spanish? And I said, well, Sisi, in Costa Rica, you just need 3 words to learn. You will learn, you need to learn how do you say bathroom, and it's baños. And if you're thirsty, how do you ask for a drink? If you're on vacation, and everyone is like, oh, cerveza. And all, here you ask for Imperial, which is a beer brand of Costa Rica, Imperial. And the last one is pura vida. Pura vida is like our destined word. It means like everything is cool, everything is nice, everything is full of life. It's pure life. So you learn these 3 words and it's easy for you. Why? You will never forget them. And it's that easy. You just go drink 2 beers or 2 Imperials, then you go to the baños and you feel pura vida. And it's amazing how over the years in one spot called Tortuguero in a little town, a sir came to me and told me exactly the same thing. And he said, oh, my tour guide on that cruise ship, she was so nice. And it was me. So one few hours that I just say, something funny, but it got into the mind. So it's hard, but if we can get one people to learn just a little bit of all the history and all the things of Costa Rica or countries, it will be just, succeed.
Right. So have any of you ever been in a position where you've actually had to correct somebody because they were so wrong and you just had to kind of just stop? And how did you handle that without like alienating them or the rest of the group? Mark, your hand shot right up. I just figured you had something. Unmute yourself, Mark.
You have to love those Americans, don't you? They know our country so well. They've seen television. They know we all live like Downton Abbey. They know that we all have tea with the Queen every week. The stereotypes live long and strong after all. We're all bowler-hatted gentlemen in the city, right? So I find the best way of doing it is, as you can probably tell already, a bit of humor. We speak what pretends to be the same language, at least British and American people, although of course there are some very humorous differences which we all can have a good laugh about. But that it helps, and a little bit of gentle humor can work wonders, I think. I think we're also here as blue badge guides in Britain, and indeed as green badge guides in Britain. We are trained in one of our many exams to earn this badge at all is called the background knowledge exam. And it's a crucial part of the syllabus because it is literally, as the label says, the background knowledge to the entire country. So it's everything from literature to the legal system to how many children go to private school versus public school. It's the kind of dumb questions, there are no dumb questions, but it's the kind of dumb questions that a first-time visitor is going to ask. Why do we drive on the correct side of the road and all of you have chosen to drive on the wrong side of the road?
Are you sure?
You sure you're
very sure, very sure. I'm very sure. It's my country and you'll listen to my version, please, while you're here. And it's a much more entertaining way than saying nobody knows the hell why it happened, but at least you give them a couple of plausible options. So these things, the background knowledge is really important because it equips us differently to anybody else who's an unlicensed, unqualified guide who just thinks they know their way on a coach from this site to that site. We actually can answer these questions knowledgeably with credibility. And back to your question before about being an ambassador, I was going to throw in that my approach to the job, and I think in common with many of my colleagues here in Britain, is that I am an ambassador for the badge. I am an ambassador for the brand of professionalism that this badge represents, and that my colleagues who have sweated blood to earn it as well represent as well. We represent a quality of guiding and of knowledge and of craft skill and expertise that we want to impress on our customers. I am an ambassador for my brand of profession. And yes, of course, I'm an ambassador for my country, my city, my culture, my legacy of empire, whatever else baggage comes with all of this. But you have to unpick what bits are relevant to the job. And the bit that is always relevant every day is wearing this with pride and explaining what it means. And the customers seeing the relationship with key sites like the Tower of London or Westminster Abbey, who respect what this training brings and welcome us onto their sites.
Excellent point about qualifications. And absolutely, I'm such a fan of that. And
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Working on that. But now we're gonna turn the tables just a little bit here. We're gonna get into a little bit. It might feel a little bit dangerous, but just like our visitors come with their preconceptions of different things and their stereotype knowledge of our areas, we also are subject sometimes to having our own preconceptions or stereotypes about different groups of travelers. And it's informed the same way. We have the same limited amount of knowledge that we get from watching movies and TV and whatever. And so how do you then, as a professional and as an ambassador, where do you go? What tricks do you use or tips do you have to say, when you've got a tour and you just think, oh, I just can't deal with another group of Frenchmen or whatever. Do you know what I mean? You just, where do you go and how do you work against that so you don't let that color then how you behave or relate to your group? So I would like each one of you to kind of share any kind of perspective you might have. Just pick one group and just a little story or whatever that and something you found useful in dealing with like a block that you had. So who wants to go first? Anybody? Mark? Okay.
All right, I'll have another go. So I can think of an incident early on in my guiding career where for the first time I had a group of senior, very upscale visitors, of about 12 of them from India. And there are some cultural differences. You know, timekeeping is an interesting concept for Indians, for example. And I learned the hard way that what you give as your take on history, having been trained in it, isn't the same as the receiver's end of imperial history. So you may drive past a statue and kind of dismiss it as you go past to some general or other. But that sound of spitting on the floor that you can hear from the back of the bus is the rather offended people at the back who remember that this general tramped all over their country and destroyed many of their ancestors. And he's definitely known to them, even if you don't have the courtesy of knowing who it is. So I learned from that one very big lesson, which is we learn from our customers and clients at least as much, if we're listening properly, as we learn on the course and as we learn from our colleagues as well. And we should never stop learning from our visitors as well, because they have knowledge, they have perspectives, they have reinterpretations of history. And yes, they may have prejudices, but then we're all human beings.
Excellent point. Okay,
I can tell you about smelly canals in Venice. It's a prejudice many visitors have when they are, oh, but today the canals are not smelly anymore. Or another prejudice regards over-tourism. We went exactly a year ago from over-tourism to zero tourism. So this is now going to be maybe another prejudice. I was listening carefully to Mark, because my point is also with Indian people. I had real difficulties with them at the very beginning, especially when they were doing this to me, you know, this, I was very worried. What am I doing wrong? You know, when they greet you, and instead they're very happy when they do this gesture with their head. They are satisfied. And instead, to me, as an Italian, this meant this concern, or maybe I don't understand. And I had, yes, exactly. Well, now Barış is better than me.
Turkey, you know, Hindi, Turkey.
But I mean, it depends. I still have difficulties working with big groups, especially of Indian people, especially if I have to manage them for a short time. If I work with families, it's much better. And I learned how to manage them. But to me, practical experiences mean a lot. So after a while, I could understand more their point and their point of view, and I could relax also, because to me, when I work and I'm not relaxed, I can make mistakes. I can be out. I can feel I'm not confident on what I'm doing, and so that's very bad, too bad. And I feel blocked. I'm not giving my best experience to the people.
So Barış, what group gives you the most problem you have to kind of expand your view of?
What I have to deal with mostly politic prejudice.
Okay.
American visitors, you know, Turkey is very similar country to United States. The way of form, the nation is exactly the same, unlike Europe. Europe based on nation-based state. But Turkey, we are living all together, Circassians, Caucasians, Greeks, Turks, Armenians, and you know, the very long history and very contradictory history. Most of the time I spend time not to convince. If the visitor is Armenian origin, it's very difficult because it's not only prejudice, it's something else, it's an experience inherited.
A trauma, yes.
Most of the time I have difficulty in politics, except that people, as they arrive here, they don't have an intention to keep the prejudice in their mind. That's what I observed so far.
Lucy?
Well, I had experience, and I don't work for all type of tourists, but when I started to learn Italian, and people start questioning me, how are you gonna deal with Italians? They yell, they always are mad, they're always screaming. And I was like, I learned because I wanted to learn. And actually I find now there's a group very happy. They're always very happy to deal with. I think that in this whole pandemic opened eyes many tour guides. They opened the eyes of many tour guides. Why? Because I probably know for 100% sure, but many of the tour guides in here, we think that the nationals, the local, are the hotters. Why? Because we're so proud and we know it all. And in this time, when we have to be tour guides for our locals, we learn something, or we started work more with something we learn and we have inside of us, which is tolerance. If a tour guide don't have tolerance, then what it is, what or how you can do your job. There's so many people around the world. There's so many cultures around the world. And you just have to be able to adapt to them, to understand that, yeah, they may know a little bit, or they may know a lot and they want to show off. But in this time, what they have to know is get out of your comfort zone. If you're visiting the country, it's because you want to learn. And this is what I'm for, to share what I know and just be happy, go with the flow, as we say. So when you get that, it's nice. I had an experience with OAT, and one day, one sir just came down in the morning and said, Lucy, how do you will handle if one day one tourist just woke up so grumpy? And I said, like, well, I will say, good morning, how are you? No, but I'm so grumpy. And I will say, like, good morning, how are you? And he just laughed. And I say, see, how easy. Just in a smile, you can change all the perspective or the perception of the people to the country. So groups are hard. Cultures can be different. But if you are willing to be respectful, to learn, because everyone learns from everyone, then you can get, to work out with the tolerance.
Excellent. Now, just for those in our audience who may not be aware of an acronym, what can you tell us what OAT is? Just what does it stand for?
Overseas adventure travel.
Overseas Adventure Travel. It's a
Okay.
My
United
Grand
States
Circle
company
Great.
around the world.
Okay. Just got all these. We're like alphabet soup in this industry. We have so many letters floating around. So
I remember Emma what told us at the beginning, previous.
yes,
And I totally forgot what I'm gonna say,
yes.
Yeah.
So now the next thing I wanted to bring up is that we're cultural ambassadors. We greet people from all over the world, but sometimes there are cultural things. It can be to shake a hand or not shake a hand, or a way you say something that is culturally
Embarrassing.
very offensive to the visitor, and you don't even know that, but all of a sudden you realize you've just done something, you've just stepped in it, as we say in the US. And what do you do? How do you recover? How do you get I mean, especially I'd love to hear if any of you have like a really good example of something where you just like blew it up and then had to kind of fix it. I would, because it is an issue and it does happen. We've all made it. So anybody want to have an experience on that? They did something really rude and didn't even know it at first.
Most
Okay.
Maybe
most
Mark.
of the time
All right. Yeah, well, I think with that Indian group that I'm talking about there, my feeling was I blew that up, and the only, I got that culturally wrong with them. But then that was a rare group that I was with for a whole week. And in the course of that week, on which I learned a lot, they really got things massively wrong culturally in Britain. And if I hadn't been there to save them, these very senior industrialists and their wives and families would have been, frankly, they wouldn't have been arrested, but they were getting it very wrong. I'm sorry, but if there is a line at Windsor Castle Visitor Centre to go through security that is quite long because of the time that I told you would be long and we shouldn't have gone there at that time, but you said you want to go there at that time, then you've just got to suck it up and stand in that line. And losing your temper with me or with the poor member of staff who is managing this line is not going to help them. And it's an embarrassment on them and their culture. So there's situations like that. They wanted outside Oxford to have lunch. So I knew of a wonderful riverside restaurant and pub with a beautiful location. It was a lovely summer's day. So I suggested we went there, and we did. And as I went into the restaurant, they were sitting on the terrace outside by the river. They loved it. It was just charming English countryside setting. I went inside to get the menus for them. And when I came out from somewhere, the women folk had all produced plastic bowls. They had their hands in there or mixing up the food. And I'm going, whoa, what's happening here? They said, lunch, we make lunch. I said, no, restaurant, want to sell you food to make money. This is how it works. And they said, no. They were so important. This guy was literally the finance director of the third largest pharmaceutical company in India. He could buy his way out of any problem. And he thought that's what he was going to do here. So when the manager came out, having seen them and said, excuse me, but here's the menu, would you like to order? You can't have a picnic here. They had to look sheepish and pack it all up and go back to the coach again. And I said, if you wanted a picnic, we could have gone down the road. So talk to me. I'm here to be your best friend in the country and to give you the experience that you want on your terms, but help me to help you. Let's talk to each other. And that's my view. I'm not here to give them my tour. I'm here to be a resource for my clients to draw on and to interpret what their needs are. And even if I've only got a half day with them, I've got to put as much effort into the body language and the eye contact and the knowledge of what they're really after as I would with somebody who I was with for a week.
Okay. Well, so there are a couple of questions, but I have one more thing I want to cover a little bit with you before we start taking questions. And that is, so we're in the middle of this pandemic. which has essentially shut down our industry and is going to force a lot of changes into our industry. And so we've already seen some of them. We've seen certain guides turn towards some guides are doing virtual tours. We got an email from somebody in London that about 15% of the membership has found that this is something that works for a portion of their membership. And so, so COVID is definitely, it's going to be affecting travel in your country. And one of the questions that we got was, does your country have now, or will it be setting up some kind of central informational area for international travelers? Like if I was going to be planning now, I'm looking at, I've got my vaccine, I'm ready to travel, so I want to go to Istanbul. Is there like a website, an official website that will tell me what I need to know about traveling in Istanbul because of COVID, that will tell me what the restrictions are and what's open and that kind of thing? So Barış, like if I were going to Istanbul,
there is a website, the Ministry of Culture website, giving the updates day by day. But I hope by the end of February, at the beginning of March, everything gets better. Not completely, but it's gets better. What was the question? I forgot the question.
Well, that was just part of it in terms of the effects of COVID. And so
I don't like this idea, the virtual tours. That's very dangerous in my opinion. Okay. Even our license may not have a meaning at the end of it. Because everybody can do this job, you know. Now, recently, many seminars, like webinars, seminars have been done by unprofessional, but they have contacts, they have a good advertisement methods, they have a good Instagram address or Facebook advertisement, but they are not guide. Yep. We have to, yes, that might be a good idea for a while to make some income during these difficult times. But if we get used to this, we may, maybe not to all of it, not 100%, but we will miss some spot, in my opinion. Right. We shouldn't get used to this idea. I think Mark also agree with me. Yeah. Well, because he's holding the right hand up. Usually he was doing the left hand. Now
this hand disagrees. This one agrees. So, if I may step in, you know, it's a hot debate here in London. Clearly, there is two parts to it, in my view. One part is the technology and the competence and the craft skills in adapting a guiding technique and a set of knowledge to the online space, whether in the form of talks or tours or immersive experiences using VR headsets or whatever you want to do. These are all of a type. That's one part of it. Many of my colleagues have done some outstanding work. Some of them are on this conference today attending, in training up colleagues with how to use Street View and other technologies to produce a good tour online. And that's been fantastic. And some of the people who've adopted that have found that it's given them a lot of confidence during a time of crisis to develop a revenue stream. But there are many other guides who frankly will never touch it with a long barge pole, and that's fine. But the other side of this, and the crucial side of it, is marketing. If you can't connect with a customer group, it doesn't matter how good your online tour is, nobody is going to buy it. But that's exactly the same as a walking tour or a coach tour or any other product that we normally have. So we have to learn those two parts of it. One is how we make it good, and the second is how we reach a market. And then the third thing, if I may, and we're wrestling with this now in the UK, is how do you charge for the bloody thing? Because as you say, it's very easy to give it away. And at a time of oversupply and underemployment, there will be people who are very willing to charge you know, exactly. half a shekel for this, because it's better than no shekels at all. And that's not good enough, because we are professionals and we've put a lot of knowledge into getting our qualification, and we need to monetize it. Now, the smart colleagues have realized that actually we are not competing here with people, you said, Barış, you know, everybody else, free tour givers or whatever, who are depressing the price. Actually, some smart people have got the potential to go for the even higher premium end, because we're competing against university lecturers and arts society experts. And, you know, if our quality of product is good enough, it will attract an even more premium price than before, because we're disconnected from the trade, who in many cases depress our earning potential while giving us volume. If we're going directly to customers, we can charge up. So I do know of colleagues here in London who on virtual tours are now literally getting hundreds of people on their virtual tour, which would have been impossible if they were physically out on the streets, and are earning significantly above what they would have been earning before. It doesn't mean they don't want to get out on the streets again as soon as it's possible to do that, and that customers won't want to do that. But for now, it's very good, thank you. And I think it will endure for quite a long time.
Right. Lucy, you look like you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just following what Mark was saying, because in Costa Rica, we have, you know, about almost 3,000 tour guides, certified tour guides. And one of the things that makes a tour guide, it's, you know, that nice to interact in person with the people, to can show, to can, you know, express ourselves with our hands and our faces and everything. But when we start this pandemic, we came and many of our tour guides move and relocate with jobs. And some of them, and not some of them, some of the companies that saw a potential of making this business with virtual tours, some of our tour guides, colleagues, they came out and they experienced this. And it was very hard for some of them. Some of them, they don't know how to use a computer, but they learn, they adapt. That's a good thing that we have. Tour guides, we can adapt, we can renovate. But I think that we just tour in a cruise ship for a few hours, I always say, this is just the taste of the whole cake. So many of our tour guides, as a virtual tours, they just giving people a taste of what they can actually have more in a real life. So we have experience with one of our tour guides that he started to do it and got a few people, you know, from local. But then these people make a reservation to go to his place and, you know, see around and then spread the word. And he now is getting back, you know, many people, small bubbles, as way they say, here and there. But I think that the technology, as Mark say, it's, if we put it on a marketing way to keep being alive on tourism as a tour guide virtual, it's okay. But I don't think so. And I'm with Barış. I don't think so that tourism will turn all into virtual, because since the all beginning and all the times, people like to travel. Humans need to move from one place to another. And that's why we are tour guides, because we like to walk with people. We like to show things to people. And the only way to do it, it's interact. As Mark say, they can do money right now, but I'm sure they're dying to get off.
Yes, you're right. It's not going to change from today to tomorrow. But Google may interfere every single business, Lucia. I can visit the British Museum. I can walk in. I can read the titles, descriptions, you know. Yes, our business, our profession will not die because our job based on face-to-face relation. But if everyone, like I said before, get into this business without license or with license, it's going to be confusing. Could be advertisement, like you said, as a menu, the taste, just 1 hour for Troy could be, I can take you Troy for 5 hours, but I can make it 45 minutes to convince you to come here. Or Buckingham, just 30 minutes Buckingham might be enough, but Buckingham may take maybe 4 hours, maybe 5 hours. That's what was my point that I wanted to point out.
Well, I would also add that look at us here on this conference. We are all joined together in a way that we could never have been if we'd had to get on a plane or on a ship or swim to New York and sit in a room together. And frankly, many of us wouldn't have bothered. But So for people who maybe have physical impairments and can't get out of the house as much, it's a very inclusive form of socialization.
Participation.
You know, there are many benefits if you want to look for them. It's not a replacement, but it's another string to the bow.
Stefania, did you want to add something?
Yes, we have here in Venice the experience of a colleague of ours who got interviewed by one of the main Italian newspapers, and her video is online, so you can actually follow her. She realized a sort of interactive system of tours, and she's very active on that. She's like our avant-garde virtual tourism experienced guide. Her name is Luisella, and apparently now in Venice we are having a big discussion about how pricing, which is the right pricing for a virtual tour. This is actually at the moment, and we are also discussing about shared tours for local people who we hope we can work in the past season. My colleagues who were particularly active in working a little bit more than others were those receiving French, Dutch, German tourists. Of course, the English tourism was a bit, British tourists were quite traveling a lot, but of course, American ones or Australian ones. Oh, I should say something. Forza Luna Rossa. Huh? Today, the Italians, well, won in the sailing competition. So I have to stand up for my Italian fellows.
Right.
And I'm very proud of them.
Okay.
But I mean,
So I am ambassading. Do you see this? I am ambassading here.
Yeah.
See, I am ambassading here. No, it's a Turkey. This is Raki.
Raki, of course.
You have to come here in order to explain you, Emma. Okay. This is just a teaser, as one of the guys, friends say, Raki. It's all Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean drink. And also I have some sarma, but I will not explain you now. You have to come here for that.
Okay.
So we'd like to
ready to come.
questions if we can. We want to try to entertain some questions if we can. I actually, right now in the Q&A, I see one that hang on a second.
I have also another. We have our cooperativa of guides. It's a special enterprise we have here in Venice. I'm part of it. I'm a member. We had an interesting experience a few days ago. We have Mardi Gras, and Mardi Gras in Venice this year was pretty much virtual. And my friend Julia had a very interesting tour with an editor, Leeuw, for students learning Italian abroad. And it was very interesting. She could give a real tour, and they connected to our site, and it was a huge amount of people listening to this tour. They were from South America, from Russia, Ukraine, all over. It was amazing. I was really impressed, and it was this week.
Well, I see one question, which I think is really kind of interesting here in the, I'm going to edit it a little bit, but almost every place has a site that everybody knows from a popular movie. It's not
you're talking about.
and it's not necessarily the most interesting or important, and might actually be something that you kind of think, why would they, it's just because they saw it in a stupid movie, and it's really, and there's so much else to show them. So how do you not show them that, but not look elitist, or, how do you kind of like deal with that kind of expectation? Or do you just say, show it to them fast and then move on? I mean, what's the best way to handle it? Because it's their vacation after all. You know more than they do, but at the same time, it's their trip, correct? So it's kind of, I think that may be something you might want to talk about. Yes.
You want to talk about Spider-Man, or about Spider-Man in Venice and all over Europe? But I mean, I enjoy, if I am working with a family and their kids want to have a look at this kind of stuff, I'm not against it. I'm with them, because as you say, it's their holiday. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
But they don't buy us, you know.
Yes, also.
Before we close, I have to say some words, Michael. Is that okay for you?
Wait, Emma.
Before we finish.
Wait, Emma's giving us a signal.
Yeah, no, we just have two more because Lucy had a comment and then Mark, and then we get to you, Barış, and before we get into,
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. So go ahead, Lucy.
Michael, about your question is like in Costa Rica, we're famous because so many people every year comes a new movie of it. And it says like, oh, we're going to Costa Rica and that's the, Jurassic Park. And that's the island and that's everything. And people will come in here and they would say, we cannot even take them because it's in the island and it's closer to the Galapagos than our country. But when they get here, it's up. But don't worry, it may seem some dinosaurs or people, around, and it will be a nice experience. But yeah, when they come with that idea, what they see in the movies, and when they actually see here, all what I have getting, and probably many of my colleagues, is that it's a lot better on a real life than what they show in the movie. So it's pretty nice, even though you cannot stop from seeing because we're green all over. So it's like being in the Jurassic Park movie all the time, but without the dinosaurs.
Without the dinosaurs.
Well, I was going to say that in Britain, we're kind of spoilt for choice. I mean, if you don't want to touch on any media, literature, music or sport content, then frankly, you're not going to have many clients as a guide. I mean, you've got to at least mention Harry Potter somewhere. You're probably going to come across James Bond.
Of course.
These days, even Downtown Abbey, as one lovely old American called it, Downtown Abbey. Oh, you get that there, do you? Yes, madam, we made it. The Crown, Mr. Bean, Outlander, and of course, if you haven't seen Bridgerton yet on Netflix, then you're missing something. So, we are that's just off the top of my head. Now, that doesn't mean you have to specialize in media tours, but you're going to at least drop them in along the route that this is where that Harry Potter scene was or so on, because you know that the 8-year-old kid's going to go, ooh, I went to the place where. So if you want to specialize in those tours, then you specialize in those tours and you have customers who are coming on your James Bond walking tour of Chelsea or whatever it is, that's fine. I don't do those tours, but I'd be crazy to avoid mentioning any of this stuff along the way.
Right, yes, the bucket woman.
Yeah, I love movies, not the movies, but the customer comes through movies because this is the only case that I don't have to explain anything. They know everything, but I don't know. They are explaining me what happened in the movies. Sort of joke I'm doing, but thanks to movies or serials, Turkey, just in Turkey, from Brazil, from Argentina, from Portuguese-speaking countries, they are coming here like rain, cats and dogs, like rain, cats and dogs. They are coming. They used to. They pass. Yes, technically, I don't like movie because I don't have something to explain about the movie. It's not an ancient city. It's not a column. It's not an architrave, but it creates
participation. Market
it creates
and
markets. Just because of this reason, Turkish people sometimes they say, "What we gonna see there if we go there?"
Murder on the Orient Express.
But that's the prejudice way, ma'am. This is the prejudice way. If you tell them there is a beautiful Artemis temple in Ephesus, they may not be interested in. But if you tell that you don't remember the serial X, A was kissing B there, they are more interested. And this is the customer attitude that we cannot change it. We have to respect for it. We are free not to accept these jobs, but sometimes people coming here to visit tomb, Mark. Recently, last 10 years, 15 years, Islam is more free in Turkey. At the past, it was not like that. People are going to tombs more, going to mosques more, and there is an Islamic tour concept. Identities, a new identity appeared in Turkey.
You think you've got issues with that. You wait till you get Indian groups and your location starts
You
to appear
are pushing me into Indian Sea.
No,
you are
when
pushing
you got,
me into Indian Ocean, Lord.
no, when you've got Bollywood movies that are filmed in London, I had an absolute home run taking an Indian group past a site they knew from their film that wouldn't mean anything to anybody else. So it's their vacation. It's the same message. Their vacation, not yours.
As always with tour guides, there's always more to say and not enough time on the clock.
Exactly.
Listen, Mike, I want to get a promise from Mark. You know, I've been to 59 countries so far, but UK. Even Ireland, but UK. And my sister living in London. I will visit London. First time in my life. I want to hire you.
Thank you.
That's a good idea.
I want to hire you really sincerely. Maybe not, well, not only one day, you know, this is not only one day.
It'll be free of charge, Barış, because you'll give me a tour in Istanbul.
Exactly.
It's
we
all
share
yours.
tours.
He's a great guy. Barış, tell me when you're going, because I'm due for another trip to the UK. It's been way too long. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this has been such a delight, and I could just spend hours talking with my colleagues and sharing. And I thank you all so much. And I know that Ellen, NFTGA, Emma, we're all so grateful to you for spending some time with us. Hopefully you'll be able to stay with us for the rest of the day and hear the other panelists from the US side, and then come back for the very end for the wrap up if you can. Emma, I think we're due for a break, aren't we?
Yes. So what we're going to do now, everyone, is we're going to take a break. I have the time as 1:12. So we'll come back. Oh, actually, Barış had one thing he wanted to say. I'm so sorry. Yes, Barış, go ahead.
Last thing. I see that 126 participants in our meeting now, and I just want to keep my network live and extend. That's why under my name, I see IG Barış in Istanbul. If any of you who watch the panel now or later, they can add me and let's create a network between guides but agencies.
Yes, that's great.
That's a very good idea.
Actually, thank you, Barış. And so what we will be doing is we will be sending a follow-up email in the next day or so that will have everyone's contact information, and guides, our panelists will be able to put their information, their Instagrams, their Facebooks, whatever it is on there. And so we can continue this network. But right now, if anyone wants to type their information right into the chat, thank you, James, for that. If anyone wants to type their information into the chat, then people can make those connections. Please make sure if you're commenting in chat to write all panelists and attendees. I'm seeing all these great comments. I'm just like, send it to everybody, send it to everybody, send it to everybody. And so please make sure you do this, and we can really help keep the dialogue going.
Thank you.
So yes, so it's 1:15. So what we're going to do, we'll have a break to 1:25, and then we'll be back. I think 10 minutes is good. Everybody do some downward dog, get some coffee, have a snack. Mark has been drinking his tea as a good Englishman should. And
I so think Lucia had a video. Wanted to share with us.
Lucia's going to share a video on Costa Rica during the break, so you can keep your eye out for that. Lucia's going to do a screen share. She's got a wonderful little video about Costa Rica to share with you as we're on break. So we'll see you in 10 minutes. I guess.
So panelists, please mute your screens, except for Lucia, who'll be sharing hers now. And then I see lots of sharing on the chat, which is great. So go for it, Lucia, and we'll see everybody at 1:25. Okay, thank you, guys.
Oops, are we leaving all or we stay here? Oops.
Hold on.
Okay, Lucia, I will.
We're asking you all to mute yourselves now.
Yeah, and then Lucia will show her video, and we'll come back at 1:25.
There you go. Hope you join.
Someone defines themselves when they reconnect with their spirit, their true essence, the nature that shapes who you are. Who am I? I am an alluring concentration of beauty, rainforests, beaches, and biodiversity. I live in the heart of the Americas, guarded by two seas. I am the deep green that entices those seeking relaxation and adventure. and I am so much more. In my essence live the warmth and authenticity of my people. People with open arms who look forward towards the future and welcome opportunities. I am a unique, happy, and caring nation that expresses itself through the diversity of its cultures. I am cradle of human talent, proud people who embrace challenges. I am a nation governed in peace with a solid, long-standing democracy. I stand behind health, education, and the pursuit of self-development as the cornerstones of happiness. In my essence lie the preservation and care for the environment, a model to the world. I breathe the riches of my land, and I recognize the wit of my people, ever capable of giving more than expected. I am a trustworthy and reliable nation, distinguished by the value of what I create. Human development, innovation, and a proven international competitiveness set me apart and enable me to export quality to the world. Those who come to know me are surprised, amazed. My greatest aspirations can be found in my concentrated essence. I am a country that attracts those who seek the value of excellence and the commitment to sustainability. I have much to offer those wishing to purchase, invest, produce, and develop. I have the required human and technological capabilities to achieve this. I rediscover myself by searching within. I find myself in what is vital, in what is true. I rediscover what is important. I am green. I am happiness. I am solidarity. I am talent. I am innovation. I am quality. I am diversity. I am concentration. I am essential Costa Rica.
Mark, I think you hear me.
I can, yes, Barış.
What is the logo of Blue Badge Guides in England, in UK?
It's
the
blue,
logo.
yes, a logo. It's blue with the
okay.
Blue Badge Guide.
So this is a badge that you get after sitting in London. It's about an 18-month part-time course. The Institute of Tourist Guiding is our professional body that sets standards and which
I have checked the
courses.
questions. You are asking how many lines going to Somerset?
Sorry, what?
Somerset. I have checked the questions that you asked at the past in the exams.
Oh, right, yeah.
Background. It's a very interesting questions, though.
Well, you know, it's useful stuff. I mean, there used to be things on there like what's the price of a postage stamp for a postcard to Europe. I mean, now it's irrelevant question, because who sends postcards? But things have to keep up. But knowing the names of some of the major ministers in the government, as I say, what's the difference between a private school and a public school? What's the National Health Service? How does it work? How is it funded? These sorts of things are questions.
It's not a multiple choice. The exam is not a multiple choice, isn't it? You have to fill it. You have to.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't seen the paper for a few years, so I don't know how it's run. But no, and there are lectures that are given, through most of the first 6 or 9 months of the course on these subjects to give you a lot of detail. And there's a huge amount of reading you're expected to do around the course to understand it. But I mean, if you've never heard of William Shakespeare, then you're not going to make much as a guide, even if you don't want to do theatre tours. You have to at least know it. But say you're a Mandarin speaking Malaysian visitor, moved to London, you wouldn't have grown up necessarily with William Shakespeare. You have to learn that. You have to know who he is and why he matters and some of his plays and what sites are associated with where he would have worked. I always tell people the first lecture on the course, guess what the first topic was on the evening study of the first evening of the 18-month course, and they kind of go, oh, Tower of London or Westminster Abbey. I said, no, it was Christianity. Because if you can't explain and understand, Jesus and the disciples and the apostles and saints and the main dates in the Christian calendar, how are you going to explain the Reformation and the split between the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church, the creation of the Church of England, what these buildings are that are called churches or cathedrals or all this stuff? You're at a huge disadvantage. But if you've grown up in a culture that was either non-religious or of a different religion, you have to at least know the basics. These things are important.
Why I asked? Because I liked very much the GANYC logo. It's beautifully made logo.
Mark,
I see Emma picture.
Can I ask you just briefly, did you see earlier, and I dropped the ball on this, somebody had asked about your quiz book. Did you see that?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I did. I stuck a link. It's published by the History Press. And in fact,
I mean, I have my copy already, but
Well, you do. Well, it's actually a series of 3. I only wrote the London one because that's all I'm qualified for. There's an Edinburgh one, and there's one in Liverpool as well. And there's about to be one in Oxford published in the spring. I mean, I won't say that it's, topping the bestseller charts.
Are they all written by you, Mark?
No, I just said they're not all written by me. I'm only a London guide, so I've written the one for London. But so I've kind of managing edited all of them. I found the authors for the others for the series. Look, my view is I persuaded the publishers that was the right name. The Blue Badge Guides quiz book. We got our brand into the title and onto the spine of something that is in all the major bookshops in London for several years. I mean, excellent. That's incredible marketing, even if it never sells a copy.
That's excellent. So now for my beautiful international panel, we are giving over the stage now to, in a moment, to Emma Guest-Consales and the U.S. panel. American. You'll hear their perspectives, hopefully. So we're going to ask you to mute yourselves. Sure. You can also, and if you need to contact each other, of course, we do have that separate thing on WhatsApp for you guys, a group chat if you want to chat in there, or chat in the chat right here.
Yeah, so I'm just pinning the American group right now, the USA-based group right now, so everybody will be appearing. Just get Leentje up there too. So welcome everyone. I hope you all, I went and did the little 7th inning stretch here, and I see some great comments coming through on the chat about licensing and about licensing tourist guides, and different cities, different countries have different rules for that. So we'll definitely touch on that in our discussion. We also have a couple questions in the Q&A And once again about licensing, and another great one about guides working with their local populations, which is something, you know, we often are touring local. So something's just to keep in mind. But we're going to start the same way Michael started out with, and that is having our panelists introduce themselves. So we'll just do a little round robin. So we'll start with Allison. She's actually our farthest away in the US because she's in California. So Allison, if you'd care to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out for our international meeting for today. My name is Allison Merrell, and as Emma said, I am in California. And I've been working as a professional tour director for 20 years or so, 21 years. I first started out attending International Tour Management Institute, which is ITMI. Many of you have probably heard of it. And so that's my certification. In the United States, we don't really have any obligatory national or in very few places, local certification. We don't have any much that's obligatory for that. So I've got my ITMI certification. I'm a member of the San Francisco Tour Guide Guild as well, which is a wonderful organization for keeping our skills sharp and exchange of knowledge. And mostly I work with French language over the road. So I do a lot of different tours, but the bulk of my work is these long, what we call over the road tours, which is basically for the French groups, it's basically from 9 to as many as 21 days, although the average is about between 10 and 13 days for the French language groups.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you, Alison. And Leentje, we're sort of coming east from across the country.
My name is Leentje, originally from Belgium, now in Chicago. I've been doing tours here since 2015, mostly walking tours, also bike tours for European clients in French, Dutch, and English. And in 2016, I started this alliance Via Americana, which is an alliance of now 9 Belgian female tour guides, all in different cities in the US.
Great, thank you, Leentje. And Nick?
I've been a tour guide since 2010, and my niche is German-speaking tourists. And I'm cheating there because I spent the first 10 years of my life in East and West Germany. But I'm the only certified independent tour guide in Philadephia that gives tours in German. Not that that leads to a lot of business, because most Germans think they speak enough English that they don't need a German-speaking guide. And I don't have a chance to tell them how wrong they are. I've done tours for a wide range of guests, ranging from members of the German Parliament, the Bundestag, Lord Mayor of Frankfurt, all the way down to real people. And I want to take a second to answer that question that was asked about Rocky. What do I do when people want to see Rocky? I specialize, my normal tour is the historic district. But if they want to see Rocky, and we have a way to get there, we take them there, because Rocky, the story behind Rocky is also very interesting. As a matter of fact, when I do bus tours, sometimes there are traffic problems. For some reason, they can't get out of New York. And they come here an hour later, and they have late, and they have a half hour to see Philadephia. So I asked them, do you want to go see the Liberty Bell, or do you want to go see Rocky? I can't remember any group that said they wanted to see the Liberty Bell. And Rocky is an interesting experience to get to see a nice part of the city. And I get to tell them Sylvester Stallone's rags to riches story, because when he wrote Rocky, he was basically broke, and he wouldn't let anybody film it unless they let him star.
It appears like we've lost Emma for a moment. Patrick?
Sure. Hi, guys.
Sorry, everyone. I got kicked out for a second. Here I am.
Okay. So I'm Patrick. I'm just like you all in the people making happy business. I'm specialized on the Belgium market. I do New York for Belgians by Belgians. I'm also like a little bit a content factory. I work for a major Belgian newspaper. I create content for them. I wrote 3 books about New York. I'm very proud of it. It's one of my little babies, but I'm even more proud of my 2 kids, because I'm a proud husband and father of a small little Matteo, 1 year and a half, and Marie of 5 years. They might come interrupt me because they are upstairs and I hear them, so I apologize beforehand, but normally mom is taking care of it.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. And I'm sorry about that, everyone. I I got kicked out for a moment, so I missed a couple minutes there. So thank you, everyone. So yeah, so now we know everyone here. And Nick, I don't know if you had a chance to tell your Rocky story. You got,
I pretty much told the Rocky story.
Okay, all right,
People want
great.
to know more, they can just.
Okay, so so as you saw from our previous panel, you know, there's so much out there. There's so much that that we can discuss, and so I think we have some of the same issues that we find in countries overseas right here in the USA. So what is one of the most important aspects of change of being a cultural ambassador for your part of the country, for your part of the USA? So Patrick?
So something what I didn't hear before, but I think it's also a very important role during this pandemic to represent. I mean, we had an issue with the travel ban. Tourists could not come to the United States, but also journalists were not allowed to come to the United States. So I find it very important for myself as well to be constantly like giving information through all the channels that I have and to keep people updated. I think it's very important. We are like an objective eye of what's happening in our country. One good example is Black Lives Matters. There was like a big movement, and I mean, it's still a big movement, but people were marching in the streets, and actually all the vendors on Fifth Avenue, they blocked their windows. And newspapers around the world thought that actually all the windows were damaged and that all the shops were like completely vandalized, but it was not the case. So I was very happy that I was able to go there and give sort of like a virtual tour and to counter that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and Allison, do you have anything that you need to sort of correct people's points of views when they get to California?
Actually, I enjoy that they have preconceived notions when they come. The United States is so famous. It's represented in all the movies, going back to the Westerns. And a lot of the passengers who come on the group tours, their ideas about California and the American West come from the Westerns. And you can see by my shirt, I'm wearing a Western shirt. I'm wearing my turquoise jewelry and my Native American charm. And, you know, I'm surrounded by images of the American West. I like to play it up, actually. I like to amplify and emphasize the stereotypes, because a lot of the stereotypes are based on the scenery. Cultural stereotypes is a different thing, but they come for sightseeing on these tours. And as an ambassador, we talked about that a lot in the first panel, you know, being an ambassador. What are you an ambassador of? You know, you're an ambassador of the region, yes, of your country, yes. Big country, how are you going to overcome all their preconceived notions in a relatively short tour? So you can play to them. Sometimes I actually amplify them for either for fun or for humor. And then they're here on a tour product. So I'm also not only an ambassador for the country, but for their tour product as well. You know, I mean, one of the core missions of being a tour director for the types of tours that I do, because everybody on these panels, we all have very different tour products that we're representing. My purpose is I want people to go home to their friends and say, you should all sign up and take a group tour of the American West, because that's a great way to see it.
Right, right. It's an excellent point. Yeah, you are. Don't forget, you know, and it depends also what kind of company you're working for, whether you're independent or you're working for a group, and you have a brand that you need to maintain, that you need to sell. You have a product you need to sell. Myself, personally, in New York, I worked for Patrick one time, so I needed to know what Patrick's groups were expecting from him, what he had sold them, so I could give them that brand, I could give them that product. So, Leentje, what would you say to that? Are there some preconceived conceptions about Chicago? I mean, does everybody want to see the Untouchables kind of thing?
Yeah, Al Capone, and yeah, that's one classic that everybody's asking about, of course. But I think it's also important, as from Patrick as well, we have that European point of view. And people, yeah, we already know a little bit about the misconceptions by living here, because there's a lot of very tiny cultural differences. So it's nice to be able to explain that to our guests. And yeah, just like tipping, for example, that's one of the biggest examples. People often, they don't know. So that they see a menu, and here in Chicago, 10% tax, 20% tip. you know, people are, yeah, small things like that. I think it's important to be able to share that with our guests.
Yeah. Yes, Allison?
Yeah, just to build on what you're saying, one of our missions is also to provide our passengers with information so that they don't accidentally or unknowingly commit faux pas or break the law, you know, smoking in a place where they're not allowed to, which could subject them to, you know, Americans don't hesitate to say, you're not allowed to smoke here, you know, and so we don't want them to have any unplanned meetings with the locals. So that's part of our job as being a cultural ambassador. It's not just an educational for, you know, academic knowledge. It's more, a lot of times it's in the everyday differences. You know, their preconceived notions or their lack of knowledge of the United States might be in very small things, and the little details are just going to make their experience here smoother.
Yes, yes. And Nick, would you like to address that as well?
Well, the first thing I want to say is when people from Chicago come to Philadelphia, I remind them that we put Al Capone in jail for a year here, something they apparently had difficulty doing in Chicago. Yeah. But all joking aside, there's really two things. Most people come to Philadelphia and they know Wayne and Penn and Ben Franklin. You have to get across to them. There's a lot more to the city than that. Then I have a little anecdote that's specific to German visitors, which you might find amusing. German and some Americans believe this also. Germans believe that English, German almost became the official language of the U.S. and only lost by one vote. That for one thing, we don't have an official language. And it's a misconception that dates back to our 18th century Revolutionary War, early government times. We had a Speaker of the House who was German, Frederick Muhlenberg, and they proposed a law to print documents in German, which wouldn't have been such a big deal. And that was defeated by one vote. Somehow, 40 years later, we came around with that statement saying that German almost became the official language.
Yeah, that's you. There are these stories that often get transmitted and get continued inadvertently. Patrick, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, what I love, and I think we are lucky, Emma and I, that is that we can open people's vision. And New York, especially New York, I mean, I always say to my customers, it's not a city trip, it's a trip around the world. New York is a little bit like the Ark of Noah. If the world explodes and New York still exists, we can rebuild a whole new world out of it.
That's actually very good.
It's that what I love. It's like having these small little families coming from a small little town and taking them around in the city and open their eyes. And I mean, can you tell that I miss my job?
Yeah,
I miss it so much.
I think we all really do. And actually, this is nice because it's so guide focused. We have that kind of feeling. We all have that same thing. Oh, I miss my groups. I miss being with people. And you even miss those encounters that it can be very awkward, that can be very difficult. And, you know, and I think we all would come home and we tell these hysterical stories to our families of different things that our guests have done or the different things that our locals have done. So yeah, so Patrick.
And if I can make a little suggestion to all my colleagues is I hear a lot of people that giving are actually like virtual tours. And most of the time it's like PowerPoint presentations in their basement that they live comment on pictures and videos that they took before. But I highly recommend to go with your iPhone and go in the city and walk around and show people. I mean, we had a lot of snow lately. I mean, people love going to Central Park and see the snow with their own eyes. And we get a lot of like very positive feedback, and it's amazing marketing. And actually you can make good money out of it. On our Christmas tour, we had more than 1,900 people that subscribed it. I never in my life did a tour for such a big audience. So there is an opportunity out there.
Yeah, and actually, I think this is something good that since we can sort of talk about and pick through since we are here together. And virtual touring has become such a hot topic. And I think all of us have some experience with it, or we've at least taken them, or we've been on them. And like you said, Patrick, you can get these enormous audiences. Does anyone want to, and I'm sort of veering off the topic, but I think this is very germane to what we're talking about here now. Who wants to speak a little bit about that, about pricing, about marketing it? How do you get that out there? I mean, like I said, we are all we are all professional guides. We all are very conscious of our products. We're very conscious of our brands, whether they're ourselves or our companies. But we also need to be able to survive these days. And so, I mean, yes, I am deviating of course, but I think that people will find this interesting and important. Allison, did you have something?
I have not ventured into creating any content at this point.
Are you interested in doing that though? Do you think that's something that people are asking for out west, or have you not found that to be the case?
I have not really found that to be the case yet. It could be, again, you know, it all depends on the type of tour companies that you're used to working with. You know, I mean, for me to veer into something like that, I would be creating an entirely new professional presence, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, I don't know if that's really what I want to do. I'm used to an entire infrastructure selling a tour and then contacting me to fulfill the tour product that they've already created. I do not participate, you know, in what I've been doing up until now. I have not participated at all in creating tour product. I'm product delivery of a tour product that, you know, a professional team with many years of experience has created over the years of working with their client. So if they want to alter a tour product and work with me on it, I would love to do that. But so far that has not been the structure that's been, because the structure that I work with, because I receive French people here, there's an agency in France that creates a tour product that goes through some sort of normally a North American based receptive tour operator who then contacts me. You know,
so that's really actually a very interesting point, because we have people who do different kinds of tours. And I know, Patrick, you have your hand up, and I know you make your own product, but I also wanted to hear from Leentje and Nick if they've gone into that. And I think, Leentje, you do have quite a good web presence, and you have 2 websites. And so how have you pivoted a lot into that in the interim between, you know, hopefully between getting back to real live tours?
Well, I've done one of the virtual tours that weren't really as good at the very beginning of the pandemic. But actually, I've been doing quite a few in-person tours, not too many, but with locals, like with 2 people, maximum 4 people, to kind of, be back. And it's just so, I was kind of euphoric when someone called me like, can we do a tour? It's like everybody wants to be back. But since I have background in journalism and communication as well, I just, I basically started another job to survive. Started in June, but I really like the in-person tours that I've been doing. I think it's about 10 since the pandemic started. So it's not that bad, but I can't wait to have more international people, of course, back in Chicago.
Well, that's great to know that you have people actually who've come. How about you, Nick? Have you pivoted to the virtual world?
I thought about doing them, done dry runs. I bought a harness so I could mount my phone in front of me. Didn't have to worry about positioning my phone. The only thing I've done is, I'm on 3 OTAs. Online travel agencies, I guess, the acronym, and I advertise all my tours as being available as virtual tours.
Right. Okay, thank you. So we'll get back to Patrick, because you've had the most experience with that, and I think some of our listeners would like to hear that.
Yeah, I just want to give a couple of ideas and suggestions, a little bit the secrets of the trade. But you know that a lot of industries are completely zoomed out. They're like fed up with being on Zoom all the time, and there lies a big opportunity. Like, for example, I'm doing a couple of virtual tours for a private bank. And what I am at the end of their meeting, their casual meeting, I come in for half an hour and show them the New York Stock Exchange, the bull, and all that stuff. But I do that also for a lawyer company. And I'm setting up, they have monthly meetings with all their customers. And at the end of the Zoom meeting, I come in and will tell something about, how the law and the courthouses here in New York are. And I think it's a big opportunity for all of us to jump on that, because they're looking like for good entertainment to make these Zoom meetings a little bit more special.
That's really good to keep in mind. Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, Allison.
Yeah, Patrick, you're primarily a local guide in New York City, isn't that right?
Yeah, I'm.
Yeah, the canvas that I'm painting on is thousands of kilometers in one tour. So I personally, my brain is not really focused on being a local guide. So it would also require me to readapt to something like that. And I wish that if I were strictly a local guide, I probably would have been more eager to jump into providing virtual tours.
Then I have something different for you to propose. Like what I start doing as well is I call it slow TV, but sometimes I have to hire a car, and I just put my iPhone in my car, and I guide people around through the city, and apparently people love it. Right. Of course, you're not going to make a lot of money out of it, but it's good marketing, and people actually they requesting it. Like I have like a steady group of following that actually is requesting, like, hey, when are you going to rent a car again so we can drive with you to the streets of New York?
Yeah, and actually
you can do the same thing, like if you have the opportunity.
It's funny because a friend of mine sent me a video. There's a link you can go to, and you can drive through different cities, and you're literally in the front of the car, and they had driving down Park Avenue, like in Midtown, and you're not really driving, you're just stuck in traffic. And I'm just thinking, and it's got thousands of views, and there's one driving through Kiev, and you just see the highway and stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, and I wrote to my friend, I said, you need a tour guide on that video, because you can set it so it plays random music, or it plays the traffic sound. And I'm just like, you need a tour guide to be doing that. So like you said, Patrick, this is all sort of food for thought, kind of grist for the mill. So I think this is a good part of the discussion. Now, I wanted to get into a question that Ruby Roy from Montreal posted into the question in the question section. I think this will bring a good discussion. Since so many of us are working with locals nowadays, because, we've worked, all of us are waiting for those big groups to come in of people who've never been to New York or who's never been to London, and they have all these prejudices and all these baggages to deal with. Right now, we're working with locals who have their own prejudice and baggage about visiting their own towns. So how do you get around that? So Leentje, do you ever take Chicagoans around Chicago, and what do they bring to it, and what do you have to do to change your tour to make it work for a local group?
Well, I was actually surprised that many of the locals know less about the city than tourists. So I focused on different neighborhoods, and even people from their own neighborhood, they're like, whoa, I didn't even know that. So I think there's actually a lot of opportunity working with locals.
That's a really good point. Nick, do you have Philadelphians who are coming to
find you?
I
don't have a current story because, as I should have mentioned earlier, this time of the year, nobody thinks of being a tourist in Philadelphia. It's cold. Our wonderful weather. We've had snow on the ground for a month, which is very unusual. The only experience I have is when locals accompany visitors. And I have to be careful about what I say, and also they always tend to ask questions that can be sometimes difficult to answer.
But what do you mean by careful about what you say, in the sense of,
any editorial comments you make?
Okay, yeah. How about you, Allison? Do you have any locals coming to you just to get to know your area a little better?
Not for the group tours, and I have not pivoted into walking tours, but what I have done is I've been working in a school, actually. I've been substitute teaching. One of the private schools is back on campus. In California, many of the public schools, most of the public schools are not in session, at least in the San Francisco area. There's no public schools back in session, but I was working at a private school. I have been working at a private school. And I've actually been able to do some on-the-fly presentations to the students, in the classroom, where I could see they've got a knowledge gap. They don't know why something is relevant. For example, they might be talking about it in their textbook, but they're missing the real relevance of it. So I've been able to put it, very local for them in their own backyard. They were talking about the Panama Canal. They didn't know why that was, meant nothing to them. But then when I explained to them about how the local economy of San Francisco, that really opened up the California economy, and I spoke to them about the Panama Pacific International Exposition, which was a celebration, like a World's Fair type thing that we had following the, it was for the opening of the Panama Canal. It was a big celebration for that. And I was able to give them a lot of local examples for that. And I think that really reached some of them. I could see the light bulb go off in some of their 11-year-old heads.
That's always very satisfying. How about you, Patrick? Do you tour for New Yorkers, or do you just touring for overseas?
I'm lucky actually that the books that I wrote, they're like sold in New York as well, because they're translated in English. So once in a while I get a request. And for me, I'm always a little bit scared because I'm so used to like tour guides, like Europeans, and it's a whole different mindset. But when I get the offer and the opportunity, of course I do it. I mean, I'm a licensed New York City tour guide, so I do know the city a little bit.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's and also, I mean, in the beginning, I'm so busy also with my own market still. And there are so many amazing good tour guides like yourself, Emma. So competing with them, it's tough.
It's I have to say it's hard, and thank you. It's interesting when we think of this local groups, and just from my own experience, because I work at a major attraction. I work at the One World Observatory, which is open, but it's just open on the weekends, very limited numbers of visitors, and so we're getting primarily locals. And like you said, Allison, people don't know their own history. They don't know their own their own backyard, really. And so the fun thing is telling people, and when I have New Yorkers on the tour, so I think all of us will find ourselves, we have that kind of a different kind of dialogue, and you have also all those prejudices to get past and all that knowledge. I mean, New Yorkers, everybody thinks they know everything about the city. And I think, Stefania will say that Venetians are like, oh, I know this, I know that. And you're just like, you really don't. And so trying to find that tactful way to correct, especially a local. I mean, how you correct a local who thinks they know everything about the city and you are the professional who's trying to explain that to them. I think there's a lot of tiptoeing around that. And like Nick, you said, being sensitive. Do you have any tips that you'd like to share of how to, especially, I think we have some relatively new guides here. How do you tell people that they're completely off base without making them feel like an idiot? Any ideas? Let's see if Nick has anything. I see him thinking hard. Let's see. Well, Patrick, while Nick is thinking on that question,
I mean,
Patrick.
Humor, always humor helps always. Like, and don't take yourself too serious. So, like show them that also you don't know everything at all time, because that's also some prejudice that sometimes people have. But I mean, it's the same thing like a doctor. A doctor cannot know every single bacteria that's in the world, and we tour guides as well. Sometimes we don't know things. So like being like humble and with a little bit of humor, you get a very long way. But what I actually want to add is that I find it very interesting during this pandemic, not necessarily the locals, but the local attractions. I get much more invitations of calls of the local attractions over here that takes the time. I mean, Madison Square Garden, for example, called me up last week, said like, hey, Patrick, I found you in a directory. Can we have a chat? I mean, things where I didn't have the time before to do. I mean, now like local attractions are reaching out to other locals, and I love that. I mean, I think I will come out much stronger after this pandemic than when I started 10 years ago.
Yeah. And Leentje, would you have anything for any tips of how to correct a local knowledge? And perhaps it's difficult for you because you're clearly not a local. So do you get pushback from that?
Well, I consider myself a local by now, but of course, I'm not a real Chicagoan. I was not born and raised here. But I think, yeah, as Patrick says, humor is important, and also just being honest. And as a tour guide, you sometimes are kind of a diplomat in a way. So be very diplomatic. And yeah, it's the difference between an international/European audience and locals is that really certain topics you should avoid, and that's the first thing that Europeans will ask you about. They will ask you about politics, they will ask you about religion. So yeah, that's a major difference between your local and your international audience.
Well, speaking of that kind of question, oh yeah, Nick, go ahead. I just
my own experiences with people trying to take over the tour, locals who think they know more than you, and every time you pause, they chime in with a whole lot of information that I wouldn't normally give because I don't have the time, and often it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to gently move them away. Diplomacy helps in changing subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Allison?
I don't like to think of it as a competition for who knows the most. I might be the tour guide, but there might be someone who actually knows more than I do about a certain aspect of the tour. It's entirely possible. Mm-hmm. And so I will oftentimes welcome if someone wants to make some, useful comments and relevant comments. If a tourist wants to participate, that's often very welcome. I had a guy one time who was an expert in clouds, and he did a 30-minute discussion on the microphone about clouds. And I thought it was a bit too much, but some people found it really, really, really interesting. I mean, talk about an expert on clouds. He was an expert. Yeah. And, the American West is a great place to see clouds. And he was thrilled to be there because he said in France, we can't see quite this much of a big sky all at once. We just drove for hours down open highway. And for them, it was quite an opportunity. For him, it was an unprecedented opportunity to appreciate clouds. So we drew on his personal expertise.
That's really great, because I've had people at the observatory, and I've learned, and I do this at the start of my tour. I'll say, is anyone here an engineer? Is anyone an architect? Is anyone a geologist? I was telling people about the Manhattan schist, and this guy said, "Oh, I'm a geologist." I'm like, "Well, never mind then." Yes. So you can let them, let them participate in a way that makes the tour really a lot of fun and interactive. And it's like Ellen said, learning new things from your clients can really put a much better, really a positive spin on the tour. And I think it helps to unify the group too, that people see that you are encouraging that kind of participation. And then that gives it often act as an icebreaker, which is especially useful if you're doing, one of those week-long tours with a group, and you have to, make sure everybody plays nicely together, and you have that kind of odd group dynamic that you have to work with.
I'm a tour director, not a tour dictator.
Yes, that's good. That's a very good one to keep in mind. That's a very good thing to keep in mind. So, to sort of pivot from there, from tour directing and tour guiding versus groups or small families. Now we're doing lots of small groups, and it's interesting because Leentje, you said that you've done some live tours already, and like I said, since I work in attraction, I do interact with people. How do you all feel right now? And this comment has come up in the chat. How do you all feel about working with groups now in the age of COVID? What are some things that you would be looking for from your groups or from your providers? Patrick?
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit difficult. I have a 1-year-old that is immune compromised. His immunity is a little bit compromised. So I'm a little bit afraid because the first people that will arrive in New York, for now, my customers cannot come because there's a travel ban, but I'm pretty sure that the first one that will come are not necessarily the first ones that are very careful with hygiene. And I find it very difficult because I'm still a business. It is a business for me. And I don't know how to interact with someone who, for example, is not willing to wear a mask. I know that I will be very strict on it, but it will be a tough one for me, and I'm a little bit worried about it. I hope that we all get vaccinated very quickly so that I don't have too much to worry about it. But otherwise, I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm. How about anyone else? Leentje, do you have any, because you've given some tours. How did you run those? How did you manage those?
Yeah, so I made them a little shorter, like 2 hours, so we don't have to go inside for bathroom, because that's a problem, of course, because so many places are still closed, and well, things are opening up here now, but and then mask, and I bring sanitizer and stuff. But I actually had one person who did not wear a mask, and I very kindly asked him to put on his mask, because that's like the policy. And I put it, when people book, I tell them, I put it in the confirmation. But I understand the worry about, what if a guest, he's still your guest, of course. What if he's just, not taking into consideration all the, what we should consider now, basic rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nick, any question, any
Well, I
comments
brought
about
the
that?
question up because I'm lucky enough, or at least old enough to have gotten my 2 shots of my vaccine. And on March 3rd, I'll be considered relatively immune. So I have the nerve to advertise on my tours that the tour guide is fully vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
I think will really help. I did have a couple of tours during earlier, didn't have any problems with masks. People had a little trouble with the concept of social distancing, but I think that's a problem, not just on tours. I think people just don't understand that concept.
Yeah, and I'm seeing some comments in the chat of people limiting the numbers of the tours. And one thing that the private groups that I do at the observatory, that's only one pod, you know, it's only one
Mm-hmm.
group, so it's only one family. So I could have a family of 5 people, but no other families will be joining it. And if I just have one person, the tour is full. If I have 2 people, the tour is full. It's just that one group. But I think something that as tourist guides, we should be, you know, we need to be really aware of this. And like you said, Patrick, you're worried about people who won't wear a mask, or Leentje, you had the experience of people not wearing a mask. I mean, and this is something that we have, GANYC at least has developed its health and safety protocols and health and safety guidelines. And I think as professional guides, we have every right to, and this is me sort of getting on my soapbox here, we have every right to, and we must enforce those rules. And I think if you put in your tour information and your tour blurb, you know, we all want to work, but like Patrick, with your little Matteo, you cannot risk him, you cannot risk your family's health. And so if somebody says, I'm not going to wear a mask, you're like, well, you're not going to be on my tour. Mm-hmm. And that just has to be it. Mark has put in some really good, some good links into the chat with information about that. And if Michael Dillinger, if you could put in the GANYC health and safety guidelines in there as well, which we're revising, and we're updating those too, because more than anything else, you know, we have to keep ourselves safe and we have to keep our guests safe too. But I feel very, very strongly that tour guides should no way compromise their safety for the comfort of a guest. A guest they have to deal with it. If a guest is going to give you a hard time, then they should not be on the tour. And I think this is something that's really, really important, and that we should all feel strongly enough that we can you know, make those kinds of statements. And I think I can speak for a lot of us on this tour that we should make those kinds of statements right off the bat, make things very clear right from the very, very get-go. And I see it getting a lot of different health and safety links right there on in the chat. So something to keep in mind. And I like having this discussion here with tour guides, because we're sort of in the group and we can speak to ourselves and know what you know, those things that we all have to deal with. So with regards to health and safety, and with opening up to one of the things that many of us are associated with different guiding associations, whether it's NFTGA or WFTGA or GANYC or Chicago or Venice or wherever. And we come from cities, a lot of cities that do have guiding that is licensed. So like we are licensed in New York City, but we did receive a question about the benefits of having licensed guides versus non-licensed guides, and getting local authorities to license their tour guides. And so my question to the group is, do you stress that on your promotions? Do you make sure your guests know that they are working with somebody who has a license, and so that becomes part of your brand, part of your marketing? Does anyone stress that in their promotions? Leentje, do you address that? And I'm not sure what the rules are actually in Chicago.
Yeah, so you have different types of memberships. There is no official rules from the city, first of all, which is, yeah, I know it's in New York, in DC, I think in I don't know about the other cities. I think it's very unclear what the rules are. I think there should be like more of a global thing, but okay, that's another discussion. So yeah, and of course, there's a lot of perks, you know, you working with a licensed guide, and people book you through your organization. But honestly, I don't think people that come from abroad, they really, I don't know. Europeans, they never ask me. I wear the badge, of course, because if you walk around, it opens doors, literally. But I don't really focus on that, so to speak. No.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Allison, do you have that in
Well,
California?
it's any sort of licensing or certificate or qualifications like that are irrelevant to people coming from, you know, the foreign country. They're not going to really know the difference. And it's an ongoing debate we have a lot here with our San Francisco Tour Guide Guild. You know, what are the benefits of licensing to us as tour guide members or guild members? Because it's not a requirement by no means. And even for most of the employers these days, you know, in the 80s, 90s, and into the beginning of the 2000s, it was definitely relevant to the local employers that you were a member of the Tour Guide Guild, a certified guide, or whatever your qualifications were. But the profile changed. And of course, now that we're coming into a post-pandemic world, it'll change again. You know, mostly what matters is, are you good at your job? Do you perform well? Are you reliable? And do the people like you? And do they rate you highly on the evaluations at the end of the tour?
Mm-hmm.
And do you do a good job for the business aspects of your assignment as well? Because I handle money for the tour operator. You know, I need to be able to represent their interests as well.
Right, right. Patrick.
Yeah, I think we all know a couple of licensed tour guides that are not good. I mean, it's not a guarantee to be a good tour guide. It is important because it's the law. You need to have that license. But unfortunately, it's not a guarantee that, I mean, I hire a lot of tour guides because we do sometimes very big groups. I work also as a DMC. And yeah, I each time I'm shocked that, yeah, a lot of licensed tour guides are just crap.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I mean, I think it's helpful when you have guiding associations that can help, you know, up the skills of the guides, skills and knowledge. But yeah, something to keep in mind, a license does not necessarily mean a good guide. Nick, I saw your hand.
Well, there's no licensing being enforced in Philadelphia, but the local association of Philadelphia Tour Guides, which I ran for a couple of years, self-certified. They have a certification exam. And I took it just so I could put that line on my website that I'm certified. Certification, unfortunately, it's a little form of false advertising, because in Europe, it's much more difficult to become certified. So I don't mind doing it because I think I'm qualified.
Yeah, and that's something. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, the San Francisco Tour Guide Guild. Speaking of skills versus an actual, you know, a certification that you can get maybe by checking some boxes. The San Francisco Tour Guide Guild chose, rather than put emphasis on working toward mandatory licensing, for some reason, they decided that it would be much better to be a skill building association. So that's why they chose the name Guild. Rather than a requirement, it's a voluntary participation for constant ongoing skill building.
That's something really interesting to keep in mind, because there is such a difference. And I think we can see this here. And like I said, just again in the chat too, people coming from European countries or other countries that are, you know, not the US, they're often have state-run, or they have large governmental agencies, and even just large tour agencies that to take care of this kind of thing, which we don't have at all in the United States. And that's something that tourist guides and what GANYC and NFTGA and the NFTGA associations are working very hard on is to professionalize the job of a tour guide, so that it is seen like a career. It's seen as a job, not just a hobby. I think a lot of us, a lot of US guides will get this, you know, oh, this is your real job. It's like, yeah, this is my real job. This is what I do. And so when you have a country's tourist board that is backing you up, that makes all the difference. And so actually, I think it's nice to have something like International Tourist Guide Day when we can celebrate this profession. It is a profession, and it is something that we do and that we love to do. That's why we're here, and that's why we're doing it. And so Danny's making some good points in the chat about like licensing in Italy, and I know Stefania can speak to that too. But also just speaking to some of my Italian friends, in the European Union, you can now be a licensed guide sort of anywhere in Europe and speak in all the other countries. So Italy has to combat with guides coming from, say, Germany or from Austria or from Spain, who are technically licensed guides, but they're speaking about Venice or Florence or these cities that have very, very strict requirements for being a tour guide. And they're just speaking off the top of their heads. We don't have that in New York City. So, and we don't have that in American cities. So how do you, my panelists here, how do you prepare yourselves? What would you consider some of the best practices, not just Googling things, but what are some things that you have found that you think have improved your skills as a professional guide? So Allison, I'll start with you.
Talking to colleagues, exchange with colleagues. Number one resource is exchange with colleagues. Facebook discussion groups are fabulous for the local, and the more honed in you can get for your type of tour or your local region is the better.
Mm-hmm. Excellent point. Nick, what about you? What are some ways that you get
I do go to Google, but I go to Google Books. There's an amazing number of public domain books that you can download. And one of the interesting things is a lot of the stories people tell that we since found out are not true were from books written in the 1890s, 1900s. We have to really be careful with that material. But they're also a really good source of illustrations. Some of us carry a portfolio. You can find some really nice pictures.
Leentje, what about you? What are some tips or tricks you have for?
Yeah, I think, well, talking to your peers is definitely important. Both here in Chicago with the CTPA, Chicago Tour Guides Professional Association, sorry. And then with my Via Americana colleagues in different cities, because you have the same audience, so you can always learn. And I think that's the most important thing, as Allison said and others said, like, keep the conversation going, and of course there's a lot of resources, and then
well, it is up to us to prepare commentary, but for the colleagues, they're a great resource for the practical tips of going to a place that you haven't been to before.
Patrick, what would you say?
I mean, I wake up, eat, breathe New York. Everything is yellow in my apartment. It's yellow, cap yellow. I always wear yellow. And for me, like, it's my hobby. It's my passion. I mean, so it's small things like I love to wake up with a good podcast. I have so many like newsletters that I go through. Facebook groups, talking to peers, but also customers, because that's a little bit the idea that I had from my second book. I actually learn a lot from my customers, and they all come for different type of reasons to New York. And that's also, once again, a big advantage of New York, that everyone find this holy grail in New York. If you like shopping, I mean, you can shop till like, if you like musea, I mean, we have the best museums in the world. If you like fashion, we have the best stores. So yeah, I mean, every day I learn something new.
Well,
yeah, if I may add, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and just literally opening doors when you walk around through a new neighborhood. Just open a door, go in, talk to people. Yeah, and then the stories will come to you.
Yeah, that's very true. And I always like to go into the lobbies of buildings just to see the space. And sometimes you can chat with the security guard and they'll be nice and helpful. Other times won't say anything, but I just walk in, I'll say, I'm a tour guide. And I'll often say, I'm a tour guide. I wanted to see your building. And sometimes that'll get me a little further in. And sometimes I get these great stories, that I would not have heard before. So speaking of stories, just as a sort of final thing, if I'd like to hear from all of you, what's one of your favorite, and a little short story about a misconception that somebody had coming from overseas to the United States that they told you, and you were just like, one of those things that you just sort of sit there and go, wait, now what do I say? Because it's so out there, or it's so interesting, or so unique. So I'll start with you, Allison. What was some of the most extraordinary things?
I had, this is quite a few years ago now, a couple came on the tour, and it was the end of the tour when the husband came to me and he said, I did not want to come to America on this trip. My wife chose the trip. I don't like the American system. And I think he's talking about a socioeconomic political system. And then he said, but you know what? I really enjoyed the trip and I'm really glad I came. I'm going to recommend to my friends. And that was quite a victory. I don't know the specifics of his misconceptions, but he liked it. Yeah,
that's great. That's great to hear. That's great to hear. Patrick, what's one of your?
I get so many stories.
So many.
But one that I found very interesting was like a very wealthy Belgian, had a lot of cash with him. He was like really wealthy. And all of a sudden, I mean, he hired me for the entire trip, like 7 days, because he was afraid to speak English. And at a certain point, he comes with his euros, and he said to me, like, to the coffee lady where we bought a coffee, and I said, like, yeah, why don't she accept euros? She will do so much more business. And I was so embarrassed, like, but it is what it is. And then another thing that I also find always very funny, that a lot of Europeans think that a lot of Americans are overweight, and then they walk around in New York City, and then they see all these beautiful, healthy, good-looking people walking around. And yeah, I mean, I love open their eyes and say that, yeah, New York, it's not fast food, but it's fast, healthy food.
Yeah. And it's just fast, and it's just fast all the time. Yeah. Great. Nick, what about you? Well,
I already told my favorite German story, and I do get a lot of Germans who tend to be blunt. They'll say on a private tour, why are there so many fat Americans? And sometimes I'll start it off with a joke, or it depends on the group. I might actually try to explain it. People don't have time to get the right food. Neighborhoods that sell no vegetables, that kind of thing. Misconception: a lot of people think that Ben Franklin, mostly from overseas, think that Ben Franklin was a president at one time.
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
Something that a lot of tour guides don't know is that Pennsylvania is not named after William Penn, the William Penn we know. It's actually his father. Great trivia question is, what original 13 of the 13 colonies is named after a British war hero? The answer is Pennsylvania. His father was an admiral in the British Navy.
Oh, okay, so that's good. I mean, I actually did not know that either. So, you learn from your colleagues. And Leentje, how about you? What is your classic Chicago story?
Well, a classic thing is also about food. People still think that everyone eats McDonald's here. It's, to put it briefly, yeah. So, and Chicago is a culinary hotspot, and people are pleasantly surprised, which is always good, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And I'm seeing some great comments in the chat. And Ellen was saying about people in DC asking where the Statue of Liberty is, or where does Sully land a plane in the river? And my favorite question at the One World Observatory. So we can see 40 miles around, and we can see out, all this, and there are all these islands. And I will have people come up to me and say, well, which one of those islands is Alcatraz? And I'm just going, wrong side of the country. So people who don't know, Alcatraz is in California. And so I'll have people, they'll say to me, and it's funny, I think all of us notice this, you'll get like the same question over and over again, often on like within 2 days. I'm like, is everybody asking the same thing? So I remember one, weekend, I kept getting Alcatraz questions, and I thought, I think everybody's watching a lot of Law and Order. So my response to the Alcatraz is, do you mean Rikers Island? And people are like, oh yeah, Rikers. I'm like, yeah. Or they'll try to save themselves, because then they'll realize, they're like, wait, Alcatraz is not in New York City. And I'll just like, yeah, wrong part of the country. Yeah, Patrick?
I had once a customer ask me at what time leaves the 7 o'clock bus, and I had a hard time to answer.
Yeah. Well, there was, I mean, and if you're not on this, I mean, it's tour guides, you should join the group of the funny things that passengers say. And I remember reading this one that's always stuck with me. And our DC guides will get this. How do they get all the flags around the Washington Memorial to go the same direction? So that's just, you don't know what to say when you get there, you don't know what to say. So Michael, you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was monitoring the questions, and there was actually one question that popped up that I actually wrote down because it was somebody asked about after Patrick was talking about doing the virtual things online, and somebody really wanted to know more about creating, selling, and marketing of virtual tours. So that would seem to be the big question there from the discussions. So you might want to throw that out there for your panel.
Yeah, sure. Patrick, you want to touch on that? And if anyone else has ideas?
What a lot of people forget when they ask for advice and want to start it. I mean, I didn't start my business overnight. I mean, I worked for like 10 years, day and night, wrote 3 books, run a podcast, very active on social media. So for me, I mean, I see myself also as a content factory. And because of that, it's a little bit easier to be able to sell other stuff than just what I did before. So my biggest advice, if you're not doing that yet, is like build your content factory and build your community. Like community building is huge. I don't get it that people during this pandemic stopped being active on social media. I see a lot of them. I mean, I just became more active, and I, like today, for example, I did like 4 or 5 posts. I was supposed to go live. I will go a little bit later live, but I mean, it's very important to do that. And then you have your community, and then it will be easier to propose a service as a virtual tour.
So would you say social media is the best, the different social medias? I mean, is there one particular, do you think it, like better?
Depends the one that you like the most and that you're the most active on. I mean, I love Facebook, I love LinkedIn, I love YouTube, I love Instagram. I mean, the one that you feel more comfortable. I mean, I love my podcast because I just can talk, and I love to talk as a tour guide. But yeah, the ones you feel comfortable. I like to take pictures. So yeah, I mean, it's for everyone different, but you have to do something because customers don't come at you just like this. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, for sure not.
Yeah, I think that's a really essential point. And that's one thing that, and even things like today, like International Tourist Guide Day, is to help make us more visible, and make any way you can make yourself visible, whether it's social media or a podcast or blog or whatever it is, that is key. And, people do have very small attention spans. And so, that, like you said, providing content, and content can be anything from a photograph to a little video to a commentary, all these different things. So I think it's a good idea for people to keep their minds open and their options open. So thank you very much for that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just keeping an eye on the time. Why don't we, so thank you all so much. Thank you, our USA-based panel for this. And Patrick had put in his Instagram there, and I know Barış had put his in as well. So if we'll take another break. We'll take another short break, just till let's say till 2:30, just a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. We'll have all the panelists together, and for any questions or any general discussion, and maybe the panelists to people who are attending too, if they'd like to hear from you guys. So we'll come back at 2:30 precisely. We'll come back here, and we'll just wrap everything up. So thank you very much, everyone. I'm just going to turn off my video and sound for a moment, and we'll be back in 5.
Well, it looks like Mark sold a book.
Shameless promotion.
Mark, in answer to your question right now, I don't have the exact number. I know it was 120 plus during the first panel.
Right.
And again, I didn't monitor them either because I was paying attention to you guys. So, but.
Well, is that, I don't suppose there is a typical, because you've never done a Zoom conference before, but does that match your expectations, or is it?
I think it's pretty good. Usually, I think when you do a Zoom webinar kind of thing, you can expect about 50% or a little more if you're lucky. Sometimes it's less than that. So, and I think based on the registrations we did do, 50% or more actually showed up. And there will be people who signed up who will be looking for the recording. Like they sign up in order, they know they can't come, but they sign up because they know that they'll be on the list to get the recording. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're all back and we're all on. And I know Leentje also has another commitment right after this. We all run from one thing to another all day, all week long. So thank you, everyone. And thank you to all the attendees who are still here. As Michael said, a lot of people will be catching up with the recording later. So I just wanted to wrap it up by thanking all of our panelists. This sort of came out of the blue, and this came out of a discussion a while ago when Ellen Malaski asked at the NFTGA meeting, well, we need to do something for ITDG. What are we going to do? And as usual, I said, I don't know, I'll do it. So I figured
and then she volunteered
and then
me.
I volunteered Michael. So we got it done. And actually it was Michael's idea to have this wonderful panel. And I hope it gave everybody a good perspective on different points of view from all around the world. So I think what I'd like to do, I'd like to go around to all our panelists. If you'd like to make some final comments, some final sort of thing for International Tourist Guide Day, speaking to your peers, speaking to your colleagues. So I'll start with Leentje so she can actually get going if she needs to. So go right ahead.
Thank you so much, Emma, and thank you for inviting me, because it was a pleasure to be here and to see so many of our peers around the world, panelists and attendees. And I think, if there's one thing I want to say to everybody is hang in there. Tourists will come back more than ever. I mean, everybody's gonna wanna travel once they are able to. So just be ready because we're going to see more guests than ever before. That's what I think.
From your lips to God's ears, as you would say. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming. Stefania.
Well, I actually had my first clients, I have to say, this week. And it was a very interesting story because it's a young chef with his partner. And well, it was a very, very good experience for me. They hired me for 3 hours. And he is less than 30 years old and had an international experience as a chef working in Paris, but he's from the Veneto region, because at the moment in Italy, you cannot go out of your region. So he's actually based in a little place near Vicenza, where actually you guys, you American guys, you have an American military base. Well, but this is, well, not my topic. I had a very pleasant experience with them because he met this young lady there in Paris, and she's from the south of Italy. So when he met this lady, oh, you are Terrona, which in Italian means you are a southerner. So they were so nice, and they were so curious because he told me, you know, when I came to Venice, I used to come with my family, but only for a day, and I could not see as much as I could now with you. And he was very much interested, and it was so interesting for me. Now I had to exchange my visit to his trattoria. So my next, you know, and I want this place to be also known by my friends. So I think this local kind of tourism makes very well. It's very effective in our business. So I'm very hopefully. I want to be positive. Huh? Well,
Great.
not positive. You
Yes,
know.
you want to be a positive outlook. Nobody wants to actually
I want to have
be.
a positive outlook, but
Yes.
and I feel this was so nice to me.
Great. Oh, great. Good. Thank you
Very
so
good
much,
hope.
Stefania.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I want
Stefania.
to share this with you.
Thank you. Barış, we'll go to you because actually it's latest for you, so you probably need to get to bed
Yeah.
soon.
He stays up all night.
Yes.
Yes. Rocky helps him.
Yeah, you know what? You know what? Tomorrow morning I have an early flight to Cappadocia to check around a couple of days. As I heard, Citibank, you know, worldwide bank, Turkey office has a meeting, and they said they estimate 3.5% positive numbers for the economy for the third quarter. So this means after June or July, we will start properly to work. But I hope at the beginning of April, we start domestic tourism, inbound tourism, with travel with Turks in Turkey. I do thank you one more time to Michael, also Ellen, to give us this opportunity, chance. And Emma, I met you first time at, as if I know you for years now.
That's
Thank you
okay.
very much for all your support, all your assistance. I hope some of you convinced to have some Raki soon in Turkey, hopefully.
Well,
definitely. I love Istanbul. I've been twice, and it's magnificent.
Not with me. Not
You
with
haven't
me.
seen it till you go with. You have to go with Barış.
Michael, take him. Take her here. Take
I
her.
will.
And also London, please. I don't.
Yes. Well, London. Speaking of London, so we'll hear from Mark next. So thank you, Barış. Mark.
Well, similarly, thank you for the invitation to be part of this, to Michael and to Emma and Ellen. I think this has been a huge success, and it really reinforces to me the thing that I'm like a cracked record about over here with my colleagues, which is that it's all about human interaction, and it's about collaboration. There is just such an enormously rich seam of shared experience here that can make life easier for each other. We don't have to all agree, and we won't. We're guides. But we can learn from each other a huge amount. And, you know, I've enjoyed all of the talks, but particularly, if I may single out somebody to make him blush, I think Patrick's grasp on some of the future options, even if they don't feel that they're for you and they're not necessarily for me, they open your mind. You've got to think of these things, and the content and the marketing side of it really seem to be very well thought through, although clearly you're just a social media addict, Patrick. I think you need to see medical help for this. You know, it's such a weird question, just to digress. You know, which social media do you find most useful? It's a bit like saying, I've heard printing presses have been invented. What do you think we could do with the technology? Anyway.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. That's really great. And actually, since he put you on the spot, Patrick, let's go to you next.
Also, yeah, thanks, Ellen, Emma, and Michael, of course, for the invitation.
Thanks.
It's a real pleasure and a real honor. I just have a message to all of you. If you're ever in New York, please don't hesitate. Don't be a stranger. All colleagues are welcome on a tour. They, of course, they don't have to pay. I mean,
and you are welcome as well.
Partners. I welcome you with open arms and a Belgian beer, maybe. And just a little story. You all know that New York is famous for all the Broadway theaters. There was a huge explosion of Broadway theaters after the Prohibition. And that's a little bit the same thing. What I think after this pandemic, there will be an explosion of energy. I think there will become one big giant orgy. And
yes, the same here.
Yeah, I think, and there's a wonderful term, and it's so true, Patrick. There was a wonderful term I heard a while ago, revenge tourism. Revenge tourism. People are like, I have got to get out of my house and my town. No, I mean, I don't care where I'm going, but I'm going somewhere. And I think we need to be ready for that. Revenge tourism. We get those revenge tourists. So let's turn to Nick next. Any final words? So Nick, if you just need to speak closer to the mic.
And unmute.
And unmute, yes. Oh, Nick, you unmute yourself there. Hold on a second. I don't think he's unmuted himself yet. So while we're waiting for Nick to unmute himself, let's speak to Allison then, since you're there.
Yeah, again, thanks to Emma, Michael, and Ellen. Thanks a lot for organizing this. And my words to colleagues, you know, I remember 9/11. The industry survived 9/11. I remember the volcanoes in 2009 or 2010, the volcanoes that grounded tourism between Europe and the United States for several weeks. This far outpaces, you know, what we experienced then. But I really do believe that tourism will definitely come back. I think there'll be some different kind of tour products. I think there'll be some shifts in the type of tour products. So I'm waiting to find out, you know, what I've been doing in the past, will it come back the same, or what are the adaptations? But I'm looking forward to the Roaring 20s. You know, we had them 100 years ago. Hopefully we'll have it again.
That's a very, very good point. Very good point. Okay, thank you, Allison. And Nick, yes, now you're
Yeah, I'm unmuted now. You can hear me, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I think I learned a lot. It was very interesting to see all the different points of view. And I think there's some tips I'll take, and I love everybody's positive attitude, which I generally don't have.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Nick. And Ellen, would you like to care to add anything? And then we'll get to Michael. All right.
First, I had to unmute. I just think it's been great. It's been wonderful to hear everybody. And again, I picked up on some hints about some things I can do for the future and things that we can do together, because we do learn from each other, and it's what makes guiding so wonderful. I think the best thing about guiding is meeting people and being able to share your location. I became a guide because I love my city, and it doesn't get very good rap around the world, Washington, D.C. And so we love where we do, and we want people to love where we are. And that's why we do it. And so it's been great. And just Emma and Michael, thank you so much. You've done a wonderful job. And we'll be sending this out, the recorded version, out to all of our associations, so everybody will have the opportunity. So thank you again, and stay warm and safe and well, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Ellen. Michael?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say how honored I am to be considered part of, to have you as colleagues, all of you. The talent, the expertise, it's overwhelming, and the fact that, and your willingness to be a part of this and share it is really, really, truly moving to me. I do want to leave one little thing for everybody, because I did my first tour after almost a year at the beginning of January. I got a private tour. I was like, great. And I've been out there. I've been walking anywhere from 4 to 8 miles a day to keep myself in shape, right? Because I know, well, tours are not just about walking. The walking was fine, but the mental energy that it took to run the tour and to keep my vocal technique up and everything else, I was exhausted after 4 hours. I had to come home and stay in bed for a day. So I'm just saying, practice all your skills, not just the standing on your feet and walking, but work on your voice, work on it all, because you're going to need it when the visitors start coming back, and they will. And thank you so much. And Emma, my separated at birth buddy.
Yes.
It's all you know.
He's my GANYC work husband. So yes, so thank you so much, Michael. And thank you, everybody, all the panelists. And actually, that's a really good point. I'm back at the observatory 2 days a week, and I come home and I'm dead. I'm thinking to myself, how the heck did I do that 5 days a week, doing all these tours, doing all these presentations? So yes, maybe, you know, walk around. I take lots of walks. I'm going to have to start taking lots of walks and talking to the birds as I'm walking around, which I do a lot. So, so thank you all. Thank you all for coming. And so I'm going to indulge in two little promos I want to make. First of all, the first week in March 4th, 5th, and 6th, we will be having the WFTGA virtual conference, and you'll be finding more information out about that. But the WFTGA, the World Federation, which is the reason why we're here for International Tourist Guide Day, they will be having their virtual conference starting on March 4th, March 5th and March 6th. It's only about 3.5 hours each day. They're going on Viennese time, on Austrian time. So it'll be very early in New York. It'll be in the middle of the night before poor Allison, but there'll be different presentations, different learning sessions and panels. And one thing actually, I really appreciate the way I'm helping to with the organizing of it. It's going to be a lot of very short little snippets. So everything's going to be very short, very digestible. I mean, this was rather lengthy. I hope the breaks helped, but we will have that. And the other thing we have is tomorrow night, drum roll please, the GANYC Apple Awards. All right, our GANYC Apple Awards. So if you all indulge me for a moment, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you our little promo video, and hopefully you all can come. The tickets are only $5 each, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So can you all see this?
Full screen it. Em, the sound is not on.
Oh, trying to turn my sound on.
Fights AIDS, the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Jerry Seinfeld for So You Think New York is Dead.
Mallory Boyd, Tom Myers, Gregory Young, editor. WQXR.
And the GANYC Apple Award goes to...
Let's give out some trophies.
I wish you congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Congratulations for all that you do.
$5 tickets to the webcast at the Eventbrite link below.
So sorry, I had my earphones in, but I hope everyone got to hear just a little bit at the end. So you can get tickets. Please, we were talking social media. If you go to the GANYC's Facebook page, you can watch that video, which is it's a lot of fun too. It's going to be a nice event. You saw me at the beginning. I was wearing an evening gown at 11 o'clock in the morning, sitting in front of my piano. We did all sorts of things. So, you know, we're nothing if not ingenious trying to figure things out here. So huge thanks to, and Matt Baker just put the link into our chat so you can all get those. So it's only $5 and it's going to be fun, and you can watch it in your pajamas. You don't have to be in an evening gown. So yeah, stay in your jammies and just hang out, and that also will be posted. So thank you so much, everyone who participated today. I really had a great time. I was wondering how this would go, but I knew I've got such pros here, and I knew it would be great. So thank you very, very much, everybody. As soon as we have the recording, it will be posted, and we will also send a follow-up email to all the attendees and make sure we got everybody. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon, morning, evening, night, wherever you are around the world, and happy International Tourist Guide Day. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much.
Happy days. Bye-bye.
Bye.